I discovered my passport missing 3 days before my life-changing Rhodes Scholarship final interview at Oxford. I tore apart my room, finding only my sister Megan's earring under my desk. When I confronted my family at dinner, Megan smirked while our parents dismissed my panic, saying, "Some opportunities aren't meant for everyone, sweetie. Maybe this is a sign." I realized this wasn't carelessness, it was sabotage. My entire future hung in the balance, and my own family was behind it. Growing up in our modest two-story house in Columbus, Ohio, I learned early that success meant different things to different people. My sister Megan, 2 years older than me, had always been the star our parents orbited around. Her blonde hair caught sunlight like spun gold, her smile could charm anyone within a 50-foot radius, and her trophy case dominated our living room, with beauty pageant crowns and sashes from Little Miss Ohio all the way up to runner-up for Miss Teen USA. I was the afterthought, the quiet one who preferred libraries to spotlights, equations to evening gowns. Where Megan commanded attention, I practically disappeared into the wallpaper. Our parents, Frank and Diane, owned a struggling hardware store downtown, and they'd invested everything into Megan's pageant career. Voice coaches, modeling lessons, designer gowns that cost more than our mortgage payment. They called it an investment in her future. "Ara doesn't need much," I once heard Mom tell her sister on the phone. "She's happy with her books, but Megan, she's special. She's going places." The irony wasn't lost on me as I grew older. While they drove 6 hours to watch Megan place third in yet another competition, I was winning the state science fair. While they mortgaged the house for her coaching fees, I was earning full academic scholarships. By the time I graduated from Ohio State University, I'd accumulated achievements they barely knew about. National Merit Scholar, Goldwater Scholarship recipient, published research in 3 peer-reviewed journals, summa cum laude with a double major in biochemistry and environmental engineering. My graduation day told the whole story. They arrived late, missing my valedictorian speech because Megan had a modeling callback that morning. During the reception, while my professors congratulated them on raising such an exceptional scientist, they kept steering the conversation back to Megan's upcoming audition for a reality show. "Both our girls are talented," Dad would say, the same way you'd mention owning both a Ferrari and a bicycle. Professor Martinez pulled me aside that day. "Your work on water purification could change lives in developing nations. Have you considered applying for the Rhodes Scholarship?" That conversation planted a seed that would grow over the next year. I threw myself into the application process with the same quiet determination that had carried me through college. Essays, recommendations, interviews, each round more competitive than the last. When the letter arrived announcing I'd made it to the final interview stage, I felt like I could finally breathe. The celebration I'd imagined never came. I found my parents in the kitchen huddled over Megan's laptop. "I'm a Rhodes Scholar finalist," I announced, holding up the letter. Mom glanced up briefly. "That's nice, honey. Megan just got contacted by an agent in Los Angeles." That was 6 weeks ago. Since then, strange things had been happening. Mail disappeared from our box. My laptop crashed mysteriously, taking months of research with it. Important calls went straight to voicemail even though my phone never rang. I started keeping copies of everything in a cloud account they didn't know about. Call it paranoia or intuition, but something felt wrong. 3 nights before my departure for Oxford, I did my final check. Tickets printed and digital. Interview outfit pressed and packed. Research presentation backed up in 3 locations. Passport? My hands shook as I searched through my desk drawer again, then my closet, my bookshelf, under my bed. The navy blue booklet with its golden eagle wasn't anywhere. That's when I spotted it. A small silver hoop earring, distinctly Megan's, glinting under my desk where my passport folder should have been. My blood turned to ice water. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't carelessness. This was deliberate. At dinner, I kept my voice steady. "Has anyone seen my passport?" Megan didn't look up from her salad. Why would we touch your passport? Because it's missing and I found this in my room. I placed her earring on the table. She shrugged. I lose earrings everywhere. My interview is in 3 days. Some opportunities aren't meant for everyone, sweetie, Mom said, patting my hand with practiced sympathy. Maybe this is the universe telling you to slow down. You push yourself too hard. Dad nodded sagely. Your mother's right. Besides, do you really want to move all the way to England, leave your family? I stared at them. My own family, the people who were supposed to celebrate my victories, support my dreams. They sat there calmly eating pot roast while my future crumbled. You took it, I said quietly. You took my passport. Megan's smirk was so quick I almost missed it. Almost. That's a serious accusation, Dad's voice turned cold. We're your family. We want what's best for you. And what's best for me is missing the opportunity of a lifetime. Not everyone needs to conquer the world, Ara, Mom said. Some people are meant for simpler things. Happiness doesn't require a fancy degree from England. I pushed back from the table, my chair scraping against the floor. 3 days. I had 3 days to figure out how to get to Oxford without a passport, with my family actively working against me. They thought they'd won. They thought I'd crumble, accept defeat, fade back into the shadows where they preferred me. They had no idea who they were dealing with, the quiet girl who'd spent 22 years observing, planning, preparing. They'd taken my passport, but they hadn't taken my determination. And they certainly didn't know about my backup plan. The next morning arrived with Ohio's typical April chill frost coating the windows like nature's conspiracy to keep me trapped. I'd spent the night wide awake, my mind racing through possibilities. The passport office opened at 8. I had to get there first, file an emergency replacement request. Simple, straightforward, except nothing in my life had been simple lately. I slipped downstairs at 6, avoiding the creaky third step from the top. The house felt different in the pre-dawn darkness, like secrets had weight and they were pressing against the walls. Coffee could wait. I grabbed my documentation folder, triple-checking its contents. Birth certificate, driver's license, proof of travel, passport photos I'd thankfully taken extras of last month. The front door clicked shut behind me with finality. My 12-year-old Honda Civic, bought with tutoring money and summer internships, started on the 3rd try. As I backed out of the driveway, Megan's bedroom curtain twitched. Let her watch. The passport office was a gray government building that seemed designed to drain hope. I arrived 40 minutes before opening first in line. Others trickled in slowly. A businessman checking his phone constantly, a family with 3 kids bouncing off invisible walls, an elderly couple holding hands, probably heading somewhere warm to escape Ohio's moody springs. At 8 sharp, the doors unlocked. I practically ran to window 3, spreading my documents like a poker hand. Emergency passport replacement, I said. I travel in 2 days for a Rhodes Scholarship interview. The clerk, whose name tag read Brenda, looked sympathetic. She typed rapidly, then frowned. I show here that you called yesterday to cancel your expedited appointment. My stomach dropped. I didn't call anyone. Says here. She squinted at her screen. Called at 2:15 p.m. Spoke with Roger, canceled due to postponing travel plans. I was in my molecular biology lab at 2:15. Professor Chen can verify that. Please, this is my future we're talking about. Brenda's expression shifted from sympathy to suspicion. Ma'am, I can't. Please check the phone number. I bet it wasn't mine. She hesitated, then typed again. Her eyebrows rose. You're right. Different number. Let me get my supervisor. 20 minutes later, I left with a new appointment for that afternoon and a growing understanding of how deep this went. Someone had researched passport procedures, known which office I'd use, taken time to sabotage my backup plans. I drove straight to campus to the one person I could trust. Professor Martinez's office occupied a corner of the engineering building overlooking the Oval, where students tossed frisbees despite the cold. His door stood open, mariachi music drifting from within. Ara, he set aside a stack of papers. Shouldn't you be packing? I closed the door behind me and told him everything. The missing passport, the canceled appointment, my family's strange behavior. His face darkened with each detail. This is more serious than family drama, he said finally. This is deliberate sabotage of your academic career. We need to document everything. He was right, but I needed answers first. I have to confront Megan alone, find out why they're doing this. Be careful, people who go this far. He didn't finish, but I understood. I found Megan at her gym, the expensive one downtown, where aspiring models networked between Pilates classes. She emerged from the spin studio, glowing with exertion and superiority. Ara, what are you doing here? We need to talk, privately. She led me to the juice bar, ordering a $30 green concoction that probably tasted like liquidized grass. I waited until we were alone in a corner booth. I know you took my passport. She sipped her drink slowly, calculating. Prove it. I don't need to prove it. I need to know why. Something shifted in her expression. The perpetual pageant smile cracked slightly. You really don't get it, do you? You never have. Then explain it to me. She laughed, bitter as black coffee. Perfect era. Brilliant era. Do you know what it's like being constantly compared to you? Why can't you be more like your sister? Ara got straight A's again. Ara won another scholarship. They literally built a shrine to your achievements in our living room. Trophies aren't achievements. They're participation prizes for being pretty. You think I don't know that you earned everything through talent and hard work. I earned things by starving myself into size 2 dresses and smiling until my face hurt. The pain in her voice caught me off guard. Megan! Mom came to me last month, said your success was getting out of hand, that if you went to Oxford, you'd never come back. The family would fall apart. So stealing my passport was the solution? It wasn't supposed to be stealing, just delaying. They figured if you missed this interview, you'd realize family was more important than accolades. So Mom and Dad are in on this. She finished her drink, avoiding my eyes. Dad's idea, actually. Mom just went along with it, like always. There's more you're not telling me. Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the glass. How do you always know? Because I've spent 22 years watching from the sidelines. I notice things. Mom's been collecting your work, your essays, your research papers, your scholarship applications. She makes copies of everything. A chill ran down my spine. Why? For me, she's been submitting them in my name to graduate programs, changing details here and there, but basically using your work to build my academic profile. The juice bar spun slightly. I gripped the table edge. That's fraud, academic fraud, career-ending jail time fraud. I didn't know at first. She told me she hired a writing coach. It wasn't until I recognized your phrasing about sustainable water systems that I realized. How many applications? 7 so far. Columbia, NYU, Boston University. My safety schools, the ones I mentioned at dinner months ago. She's thorough. I stood abruptly, the booth suddenly too small. Where's my passport, Megan? I don't have it anymore. Dad took it from me yesterday, said it was better if I didn't know where it ended up. This is insane. Our parents are literally stealing my future to give it to you. I never asked for this. Her voice cracked. You think I want your life, your pressure, your expectations. I just wanted them to love me for who I am not, who they wanted me to be. We stared at each other across 22 years of misunderstanding. 2 sisters shaped by the same dysfunction in completely different ways. Help me, I said finally. Help me fix this. I can't. They'll cut me off. I have nothing without them. No job, no savings, no real skills except walking in heels and answering personality questions. You have more than you think. She shook her head. Go to your passport appointment. Get to Oxford. Live your dreams. Just don't hate me forever, okay? I left her there with her empty glass and empty excuses. The parking lot felt too bright, too normal for what I'd just learned. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom, coming home for lunch, made your favorite chicken casserole. Acting like nothing was wrong, like they hadn't orchestrated the complete derailment of my future, like chicken casserole could fix betrayal. I typed back on my way. If they wanted to play games, fine, but I'd spent 4 years studying chemical reactions. I knew that sometimes adding the right catalyst could cause an explosion. Time to be the catalyst. I pulled into our driveway at exactly noon, my hands steady on the wheel despite the storm raging inside me. The house looked deceptively peaceful, white siding gleaming in the weak April sun. Mom's garden gnomes smiled their painted smiles, unaware they were decorating a war zone. Inside, the smell of chicken casserole mixed with the lingering scent of Dad's morning cigarettes, even though he swore he'd quit. Mom bustled around the kitchen, wearing her good apron, the one with roosters on it she saved for special occasions. Perfect timing. She beamed like this was any other Tuesday. I was just pulling it out of the oven. Dad sat at his usual spot, newspaper spread before him, pretending to read the business section he never understood. The scene felt rehearsed, a performance of normalcy. I played along, settling into my chair. "Smells great, Mom." She preened at the compliment, serving generous portions. We ate in silence, thick as the casserole's cream sauce. Finally, I set down my fork. "I have a passport appointment this afternoon." Dad didn't look up. "That's so—" "Emergency replacement. Should have it by tomorrow morning." Mom's serving spoon clattered against the dish. "These things take time, honey. Weeks, usually. Not when you have the right connections." Now, Dad looked up his reading glasses, reflecting the overhead light. "What connections?" "Professor Martinez knows someone at the State Department, former student who owes him a favor." "Complete fabrication, but their faces told me everything." Mom went pale beneath her foundation. Dad's jaw tightened the way it did when quarterly taxes were due. "Besides," I continued conversationally, "the Rhodes Committee is very understanding about passport issues. Happens more than you'd think. They've arranged for video interviews in emergency situations." Video interviews." Mom's voice pitched higher. "Through the British consulate. Secure connection, verified identity. Technology's amazing these days." Dad folded his newspaper with deliberate precision. "You seem to have thought of everything." "I learned from the best." The doorbell rang, saving us from whatever came next. Mom jumped up gratefully. "I'll get it." Voices drifted from the foyer. Mom's surprised tone, then another woman's voice, authoritative and familiar, though I couldn't place it. They appeared in the doorway together, study and contrasts. Mom in her rooster apron, flustered. The other woman in a sharp navy suit that probably cost more than our mortgage. Eleanor Blackwood, Dad's estranged sister. The aunt we hadn't seen in 5 years. The federal judge who'd been erased from family photos and forgotten at holidays. The woman who'd committed the unforgivable sin of being too successful. "Hello, Frank." Her voice could have frozen the casserole. "Diane, and my brilliant niece, Ara." Dad stood slowly, his face cycling through emotions like a broken slot machine. "Eleanor, what are you doing here?" "Can't an aunt visit her family?" She moved into the kitchen like she owned it, which, knowing Eleanor, she probably could, especially when she hears her only niece has accomplished something extraordinary. "How did you," Mom started, "hear about the Rhodes Scholarship?" Eleanor smiled, all teeth and no warmth. "I have my sources. Sit down, Diane. You look ready to faint." Mom sat. Eleanor claimed Megan's empty chair, surveying the table like a judge examining evidence. "I must say I'm surprised," she continued. "When I heard Ara was a finalist, I expected to find celebration preparations. Champagne, cake, pride." "We're proud," Dad said stiffly, "in our own way." "Your way seems rather subdued." She turned to me, her expression softening slightly. "How are you feeling about the interview, dear?" I chose honesty. Nervous, especially with my passport missing. Missing, her eyebrows arched perfectly. How unfortunate. When did you notice? Last night. And I suppose you've searched everywhere, filed a police report? Not yet. I was hoping it would turn up. She nodded thoughtfully. Hope can be dangerous when time is critical. May I see your room? Sometimes fresh eyes spot what familiar ones miss. Dad shifted uncomfortably. Eleanor, this isn't necessary. Of course it is, she stood gracefully. Lead the way, Ara. I led her upstairs, hyper-aware of my parents' whispered argument erupting behind us. My room looked like a tornado had hit evidence of last night's frantic searching. Eleanor closed the door and turned to me, all pretense dropping. They took it. Not a question, a statement. Yes. Do you know where it is? No, Megan says Dad has it. She moved to my window, gazing out at the backyard where I'd built science fair projects and dreams. I've been watching you, Ara, from afar, respecting Frank's wishes to stay away, but watching nonetheless. Your publications, your awards, your brilliant mind trapped in this small-minded house. Why did he cut you off? She smiled sadly. I refused to dim my light to make his shine brighter. I made partner at my firm the same week his hardware store first went bankrupt. He couldn't forgive me for succeeding while he failed. And now I'm following your path. No. She turned from the window. You're forging your own. But yes, Frank sees the parallels. Diane enables him because she has no identity outside being Mrs. Franklin Harper. And Megan is caught in the middle. We all make choices. Now let's discuss solutions. The passport appointment this afternoon, if they haven't canceled it again. She pulled out her phone. They won't. What time? 2:30. She typed rapidly. Done. You now have a federal marshal escort to ensure you make it. Judge's prerogative in cases of suspected domestic interference. My mouth fell open. You can do that? I can do quite a bit more, but first we need that passport. Frank's not creative. Where would he hide something important? I thought about Dad's patterns, his habits, his workshop, the locked cabinet where he keeps Mom's anniversary presents. Then we'll need a distraction. She smiled, and I saw where I'd inherited my strategic thinking. How do you feel about a small family crisis? What kind of crisis? The kind where a federal judge arrives with a marshal to discuss the allegations of mail theft and academic fraud. My knees went weak. You know about that. Professor Martinez called me this morning. We've stayed in touch over the years. He was concerned about your welfare. This could destroy them. Her expression hardened. They're destroying you. The question is whether you want to save yourself or go down with their ship. I thought about 22 years of being invisible, of achievements minimized, dreams deferred, potential sacrificed on the altar of Megan's mediocrity, of my own parents actively sabotaging my future. Save myself. Good girl, here's what we're going to do. 30 minutes later, a black town car pulled into our driveway. Eleanor had changed into her judge's robes, an intimidation tactic that worked beautifully. The federal marshal beside her looked like he bench-pressed defendants for fun. I watched from my window as my parents answered the door. Mom's shriek carried clearly, Dad's blustering protests, Eleanor's calm recitation of federal statutes. While they were distracted, I slipped through the back door into Dad's workshop. The familiar smell of sawdust and WD-40 wrapped around me like a toxic embrace. His locked cabinet stood in the corner secured with a combination lock he thought was clever. 0704 July 4th, because Frank Harper was nothing if not predictable. Inside, between a jewelry box I recognized from 3 Christmases ago and an envelope marked Megan's graduation surprise, sat my passport. I grabbed it along with something else that caught my eye. A folder labeled Ara, Oxford. Inside were printouts of flights to London, all booked in my name, all for dates after my interview. He'd been planning to send me away afterward. Let me think I'd failed on my own, then ship me off to save face. A one-way ticket to nowhere, making it look like my choice. The workshop door opened. Dad stood silhouetted against the afternoon light, his face unreadable. Put it back, Ara. No. You don't understand what you're doing, what this will cost our family. What about what it's costing me? He stepped inside, closing the door. In the dim light, he looked older, defeated. Do you think I wanted this, any of this? Then why? Because I failed. The words exploded out of him. The store, the investments, everything I touched turned to garbage. But your mother, she still looked at me like I was somebody. Until you came along with your prizes and your scholarships and your damn potential. So you decided to destroy it. I decided to protect what I had left. My marriage, my family, my dignity. By stealing mine? His shoulders sagged. It wasn't supposed to be like this. You were supposed to accept it. Stay home. Be normal. I was never normal, Dad, and that's not a bad thing. Eleanor's poisoned you against us. No, you poisoned yourselves against me. I'm just finally seeing it clearly. Footsteps on the path outside. Eleanor's voice calling my name. Choose Aura. Dad's voice turned desperate. Them or us. You can't have both. I looked at this man who'd raised me and tried to destroy me in equal measure. I choose me. I pushed past him out into the light where Eleanor and the marshal waited. Behind us, Dad stood in his workshop doorway looking like what he was. A small man in a small life who'd tried to make his daughter smaller to match. Eleanor took my arm gently. You have what you need. I held up my passport. Everything. Then let's get you to that appointment. You have a future to claim. As we drove away, I didn't look back. Some bridges were meant to burn. Some families were meant to leave. And some daughters were meant to soar no matter who tried to clip their wings. The federal building's marble lobby echoed with purpose and possibility. Eleanor's heels clicked confidently beside my worn flats as we approached the passport office. The marshal had stayed behind to continue discussing mail theft statutes with my parents, a conversation I was grateful to miss. Chin up, Eleanor murmured. You're about to learn what real power looks like. The same clerk from this morning, Brenda did a double take when she saw us. Her supervisor materialized instantly, apparently recognizing Eleanor. Judge Blackwood, how can we help you today? My niece requires expedited passport services. There have been attempts at interference. I trust this office can ensure smooth processing. Absolutely, Your Honor. The next hour passed in a blur of forms and fees. What normally took weeks, compressed into minutes under Eleanor's watchful eye. As we waited for the final processing, she guided me to a quiet corner. Tell me about your research, the water purification system. I brightened despite the day's chaos. It's a membrane technology using modified graphene oxide. Basically, it can remove contaminants at the molecular level while remaining cost-effective for rural communities. In layman's terms, clean drinking water for pennies per gallon, no electricity required. Her eyes sharpened. Patent pending. Filed 6 months ago. Good. Guard that carefully. Now about Oxford. You'll need more than just a passport. I have my presentation ready, my suit pressed. I mean allies, resources, protection from further sabotage. She pulled out her phone. What's your professor's number? I gave her Dr. Martinez's contact information, watching as she typed rapidly. Oh, what are you doing? Building your safety net. Your family won't give up easily. We need to ensure you make it to that interview intact. My phone buzzed, an unknown number with a British country code. Answer it, Eleanor instructed. Hello. Miss Harper, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from the Rhodes Trust. The accent was crisp, professional. We've been made aware of some unusual circumstances surrounding your passport. I want to personally assure you that the committee takes candidate welfare seriously. If you experience any further difficulties, you have my direct line. Thank you, Dr. Chen. That's very kind. Not kindness, Miss Harper. Investment. We've reviewed your application extensively. Your water purification research alone could impact millions. We won't let bureaucratic obstacles prevent us from considering such a promising candidate. Safe travels. The line disconnected. I stared at Eleanor. How did you? Sarah was my law clerk 15 years ago, before she returned to academia. The world is smaller than you think when you reach certain levels. Judge Blackwood. Brenda approached with an envelope. The emergency passport is ready. I opened it with trembling hands. There it was, my future in navy blue and gold, valid for 10 years of possibilities. Eleanor smiled. Step 1 complete. Now for step 2, we need to get you on a plane before your parents regroup. My flight isn't until tomorrow evening. Wrong. Your original flight isn't until tomorrow evening. She showed me her phone screen. Your new flight leaves in 6 hours. First class, my treat. Eleanor, I can't accept. Consider it an investment in my legacy. I couldn't have children, Ara, but I can help the child who shares my spirit, if not my DNA. Tears threatened. I'd cried more in the last 2 days than the previous 2 years. Also, she continued briskly, we need to discuss what else you found in that workshop. The folder. I'd almost forgotten in the passport excitement. Plane tickets, one-way tickets for after my interview. May I see them? I handed over the folder. She studied the contents, her expression darkening. These aren't just tickets. Look at the fine print. I leaned closer. There in tiny text were terms and conditions for a therapeutic retreat program in Arizona. Minimum 6-month stay. Specializing in adjustment disorders and oppositional behaviors. They were going to institutionalize me. Make it look voluntary. You'd return fixed of your ambitions. If you refused to go, they'd use it as evidence of instability. Eleanor's voice could have cut glass. This is deeper than mere jealousy, Ara. This is systematic control. My phone rang. Mom's ringtone. Eleanor shook her head. Don't answer. Not yet. We need more information first. She made another call. Marcus Eleanor Blackwood, I need a favor. Deep background check on Franklin and Diane Harper of Columbus. Yes, especially financial, within the hour. Who's Marcus? Private investigator, former FBI. He'll find what we're missing, because something about this doesn't add up. Your parents don't have money for Swiss finishing schools or Arizona retreats. We left the federal building through a side entrance Eleanor somehow had access to. Her driver waited with the engine running. Where to, Your Honor? The Hilton downtown. We need a secure location to plan. I should go home and pack? Absolutely not. We'll buy what you need. That house is compromised. The hotel suite was larger than our entire first floor. Eleanor ordered room service while making more calls, building what she called a protective network around me. I stood at the window watching Columbus sprawl beneath cloudy skies. Somewhere down there, my parents were probably huddled with lawyers. Megan was probably crying prettily into someone's shoulder. And I was here in a luxury suite with an aunt I barely knew planning my escape. Ara, Eleanor joined me at the window. Marcus sent preliminary findings. She handed me a tablet. Financial records filled the screen. Bankruptcy filings, defaulted loans, and then... What's the Harper Family Trust? Keep reading. I scrolled down. The trust had been established 23 years ago by Margaret Chen Harper. Who's Margaret Chen Harper? Eleanor's expression was carefully neutral. You tell me. Look at the beneficiary. There, in legal black and white, primary beneficiary, baby girl Chen, adopted by Franklin and Diane Harper, renamed Ara Marie Harper. The tablet slipped from my numb fingers. Eleanor caught it smoothly. I'm adopted. It appears so, and from a rather wealthy birth family. The trust disperses fully when you turn 25 or upon completion of graduate studies, whichever comes first. 3 years or when I finish at Oxford. Hence, their desperation to stop you. According to this, they've been drawing maintenance fees from the trust for 2 decades. Legal, but barely. If you complete your studies independently, their access ends immediately. I sank onto the plush sofa, my world tilting off its axis. My whole life is a lie. No. Eleanor sat beside me, her voice firm. Their deception is a lie. Your achievements are real. Your potential is real. Your future is real. Why didn't they tell me? Control, money, fear. Pick your poison. She checked her watch. We have 3 hours before your flight. Questions. Thousands. Start with the most important. I thought carefully. Who was Margaret Chen Harper? Eleanor smiled sadly. That, my dear, is a question for Oxford, but I suspect. She pulled up another document. Dr. Margaret Chen, biochemist, 3 patents in water purification technology, died in a car accident 23 years ago, shortly after establishing the trust. Water purification, like my research, like my passion I thought I'd discovered on my own. Nature or nurture, I whispered. Perhaps both. Perhaps destiny. Eleanor stood. But first, we get you safely to England. Then you can unravel the rest. A knock at the door made us both freeze. Eleanor checked the peephole, then relaxed. It's safe. She opened the door to reveal Professor Martinez looking frazzled but determined. Aura! Thank God you're okay. Your parents called the university claiming you'd had a breakdown. The dean was ready to put a hold on your transcripts. Which you prevented, Eleanor guessed. Along with half the science faculty, we staged something of an academic coup, he smiled grimly. Turns out, ERA has more allies than enemies. Dr. Patel, Dr. Washington, even cranky Dr. Hoffman signed affidavits about her mental stability and research prowess. The chemistry department? I was stunned, but they barely know me. They know brilliance, and they protect their own. He handed me a folder. Letters of support, in case Oxford has questions. Also, your research backup. I know you keep copies, but I made extras. Trust no one with your intellectual property. Eleanor checked her watch again. We need to leave for the airport soon. I'll drive, Martinez offered. My car's less conspicuous than your town car. As I gathered my few belongings, my phone buzzed with texts. Fellow students offering support, lab partners expressing outrage, my academic family rallying when my blood family failed. Ready? Eleanor asked. I looked around the suite. In 3 hours, I'd gone from trapped to free, from daughter to orphan to heiress, from alone to protected. One more thing. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Megan. The trust Mom and Dad have been stealing from, it's mine. Complete your applications honestly, or I'll expose everything. This is your chance to break free too. Choose wisely. Then I turned off the phone, leaving the past on silent. Now I'm ready. As we headed for the door, Eleanor took my arm. Your birth mother would be proud. How do you know? She smiled mysteriously. Oxford holds many secrets, Ara. Go discover them all. The elevator descended toward my new life, carrying 3 unlikely allies, and one young woman finally understanding that family isn't always blood, isn't always home, and isn't always worth saving. Sometimes the family that matters most is the one you build yourself, one brilliant mind at a time. Professor Martinez's ancient Subaru smelled like coffee and determination as we wound through Columbus traffic. Eleanor sat beside him, fielding calls with surgical precision, while I huddled in the back seat, my new passport clutched like a talisman. Every red light felt like a trap, every passing car a potential ambush. Relax, Martinez said, catching my eyes in the rearview mirror. Your parents don't even know you've left the federal building yet. They know me. They'll figure it out. Eleanor ended her latest call. Not in time. Marcus has eyes on their house. Your father is currently ranting to a lawyer who's explaining why federal mail theft charges are serious. Your mother is stress baking. 7 pies and counting. Anger and carbs, the Harper family crisis management system. What about Megan? I asked. Radio silence since this morning. My phone powered back on for the flight check-in immediately exploded with notifications. 12 missed calls from mom, 8 from dad, 23 texts ranging from concern to threatening, and one message from an unknown number. Ara, it's Megan, using friend's phone. Meet me at airport, southwest entrance. Trust me. Eleanor read it over my shoulder. Trap. Maybe, or maybe she finally chose a side. We don't have time for maybes, Martinez said. Flight boards in 90 minutes. But something in my sister's message nagged at me. Trust me. 2 words she'd never said before. Can we risk 5 minutes? Eleanor and Martinez exchanged glances. Your call, she said finally. Your future. Southwest entrance, 5 minutes. Martinez adjusted course. The airport appeared ahead, glass and steel promising escape. Late afternoon sun painted everything gold, making even the parking garage look hopeful. We pulled up to Southwest Departures. There, sitting on a bench between 2 security guards, was Megan, but not the Megan I knew. This version wore jeans and a Ohio State hoodie, her perfect pageant hair pulled into a messy bun. She looked normal. 2 minutes, Eleanor warned. Marcus status. Her phone buzzed. Parents just left their house, heading this direction. 15 minutes out if they hit traffic. I jumped out before the car fully stopped. Megan stood, mascara streaking her cheeks. I'm sorry, she said immediately, for everything, for being weak and jealous and letting them use me. Why are you here? She thrust a manila envelope at me. Because you deserve to know everything, and because... She took a shaky breath. Because for once in my life, I want to do the right thing. I opened the envelope. Documents spilled out. Adoption papers, trust fund statements, and photographs. Where did you get these? Mom's safety deposit box. She doesn't know I knew the combination. Megan pointed to one photo. That's your birth mother, Margaret Chen. Look at the back. I flipped it over in neat handwriting. For my daughter, may you change the world like water changes stone slowly, but inevitably. Love, always, Mom. My throat closed. My birth mother had held me, had loved me, had left me more than money. She'd left me purpose. There's more, Megan said urgently. The trust isn't just money. There's intellectual property, patents, research notes. It's all been sitting in a law firm waiting for you to claim it. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm tired of being their puppet. Because you texted me about choosing wisely, and for once, I want to choose right. She glanced nervously at the parking garage. They'll be here soon. Dad called me 15 times demanding I stop you. Come with me, I said impulsively. Get on a plane, go anywhere, start over. She smiled sadly. With what money? What skills? I can't even write my own essays, remember? Megan, go. Live your dreams. Maybe someday I'll find my own. She hugged me, suddenly fierce and desperate. I love you, Ara. I've always loved you. I just didn't know how to show it through all the noise. A horn honked. Martinez's warning time was up. Wait. I dug in my bag, pulled out cash I'd withdrawn earlier. $500. It's not much, but I can't take your money. It's not mine. It's Margaret Chen's, my birth mother's. And something tells me she'd want both Harper daughters to have a chance at freedom. Megan took the money with trembling hands. What will I do? Anything, everything. Start by being yourself. Another honk, more urgent. I have to go. Ara, she called as I ran back to the car. Check your email when you land. I sent you something. No time to ask what. I dove into the back seat as Martinez peeled out. Through the rear window, I watched Megan grow smaller, still standing there in her normal clothes with her imperfect hair looking more beautiful than any pageant had ever made her. Cutting it close, Eleanor muttered, but her expression had softened. Terminal B, international departures, quickly. The next 30 minutes blurred together. Check-in, security. Eleanor's badge mysteriously expediting every line. We reached the gate as first boarding call echoed through the terminal. "This is where we part," Eleanor said. "For now." "I don't know how to thank you." "Succeed. That's thanks enough." She pressed a business card into my hand. "My personal numbers. Use them. Day or night." Martinez bear-hugged me, tears unashamed on his face. "Make us proud, mija. Change the world." First class boarding now," the gate agent announced. I walked down the jet bridge, each step taking me further from everything I'd known. At the plane's door, I turned back. Eleanor and Martinez stood watching guardian angels in business suits and lab coats. Then, I was inside, guided to a seat that cost more than my car. Champagne appeared, a menu with foods I couldn't pronounce. Luxury I'd never imagined. "Birum, first time in first class," the flight attendant asked kindly. "First time everything." She smiled. "Then let me make it special. We have 6 hours to London. Plenty of time to celebrate whatever you're flying toward." "Oxford, the Rhodes Scholarship." "How wonderful, let me guess. Science. You have that look." That look. Like you're solving puzzles even while sitting still." As we taxied toward the runway, I finally checked my phone. Megan's email waited. "Ara, I recorded Mom and Dad discussing the trust last month. Also documented the plagiarism. Files attached. Use them if needed. I'm driving to Chicago tonight. Cousin Beth says I can crash there while I figure things out. You gave me courage. Maybe I'll find my own path now. Break the cycle. Love your sister for real this time." Below were audio files, screenshots, evidence that could bury our parents legally. Megan had been planning her own escape just differently than mine. The engines roared. Columbus fell away beneath us, growing smaller until it disappeared into clouds and memory. Somewhere down there, my parents were discovering both daughters had slipped their grasp. Their perfect pageant puppet and their hidden genius, both gone in one afternoon. I opened the manila envelope again, studying my birth mother's photo. We had the same eyes, the same determined chin. She died when I was barely a year old, but she'd left me everything that mattered. Not just money or patents, but a legacy of brilliance and purpose. "Margaret Chen," I whispered, "I hope I make you proud." The flight attendant appeared with dinner. Real silverware, actual plates, food that looked like art. "The lamb is excellent," she suggested, "though some prefer the salmon." "What do you recommend for someone starting a new life?" She grinned. "Definitely the lamb. New beginnings require bold choices." Bold choices. I thought about the interview tomorrow, the committee waiting to evaluate not just my research, but my character. Would they see a girl running from family drama or a woman choosing her destiny? My phone buzzed one last time before I switched it to airplane mode. Dr. Chen from the Rhodes Trust. "Safe travels, Miss Harper. Looking forward to meeting the young woman who impressed Sarah Blackwood enough to call in 15-year-old favors. Your water purification system could save lives. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." The plane lifted into the sunset, chasing tomorrow across the Atlantic. Below America, spread out like a promise I was finally ready to keep. Not to my adoptive parents, not to their narrow vision of success, but to a birth mother who'd loved me enough to ensure I'd have choices. And to myself, the girl who'd hidden in shadows, the woman emerging into light. I raised my champagne glass to the window, toasting clouds and possibility, to Margaret Chen, to Eleanor Blackwood, to Professor Martinez, to Megan finding her way, and to Ara Harper, whoever she's about to become. The champagne tasted like freedom, like future, like water transforming slowly but inevitably into something powerful enough to carve through stone. 6 hours to London, a lifetime to change the world. The adventure was just beginning. Night wrapped around the Atlantic like a promise as our plane carved through darkness toward dawn. I should have been sleeping, preparing for the interview that would determine my future. but my mind raced faster than our cruising altitude. The first-class cabin hummed with quiet, luxury, soft lighting, full flat beds, the occasional clink of real glassware. A universe away from the chaos I'd left behind. My phone foolishly turned back on during a moment of weakness showed 57 missed calls. The voicemails painted a portrait of escalating panic. Mom sobbing, "Ara, sweetie, there's been a misunderstanding. Please come home so we can talk." Dad furious, "You ungrateful child, after everything we've done for you." Mom again desperate, "The police are involved now, is that what you want? Your father arrested?" Dad threatening, "That money isn't yours until you're 25. We control it until then. Come home now or we'll freeze every account." The last message time-stamped an hour ago chilled me. "Miss Harper, this is James Morrison from Morrison and Associates. Your parents have retained our firm regarding the Chen Trust. We need to discuss your unauthorized departure and the stolen documents. Please contact us immediately to avoid legal consequences." Stolen documents. They were claiming I'd stolen my own adoption papers, my own birth mother's photographs. "Oh, can't sleep." The flight attendant appeared with chamomile tea, reading my distress with professional grace. "Anxious about tomorrow," I admitted. "Oxford interview, right? You mentioned it earlier." She settled into the empty seat beside me. First class meant personal service, apparently. Want to practice? I studied at Cambridge myself centuries ago. "You did." "Literature. Didn't finish, fell in love with a pilot, followed him around the world instead. 20 years of marriage and 3 kids later, no regrets. But I remember those interviews, terrifying and exhilarating." "What if they ask about my family situation?" She studied me shrewdly, running from something or towards something. "Both." "Then tell them that. The committees value honesty over perfection. They're investing in potential, not polish." She patted my hand. "Besides, you're not the first brilliant student to escape a difficult family, won't be the last." After she left, I opened Megan's files. The audio recordings were damning, our parents discussing managing Ara's expectations and protecting the family's interests. But one conversation dated 3 weeks ago stopped my heart. Mom's voice. "The investigator found something. Margaret Chen wasn't just some random woman who died." Dad, "So she was part of the Chen Foundation. Her father founded Chen Biotech. When she died, she left everything to the baby patents research future royalties. We're not just talking about trust fund money, Frank. We're talking about millions if any of those patents get developed. Then we make sure they don't get developed. At least not by Ara." "How?" "Keep her close. Keep her small. Maybe she meets someone, settles down, forgets about science. The trust has a clause. If she doesn't claim it by 30, it reverts to secondary beneficiaries." Us. Us. I paused, the recording nausea rolling through me. They'd known. All along, they'd known exactly who I was, what I'd inherited, what I could become. And they'd tried to bury it all. The plane began its descent into Heathrow as dawn painted the English countryside gold. Somewhere below Oxford waited with its dreaming spears and ancient stones. But between here and there lay immigration customs and the very real possibility that my parents had found a way to stop me even across an ocean. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly. Local time is 6:47 a.m. I changed in the lavish bathroom, trading my wrinkled clothes for the outfit Eleanor had insisted on buying, a sharp navy suit that made me look older, more confident. The woman in the mirror bore little resemblance to the girl who'd discovered her missing passport just 3 days ago. The plane touched down smoothly. Around me, business travelers gathered their belongings with practiced efficiency. I had only my carry-on and the weight of unexpected history. Immigration loomed ahead. The officer examined my emergency passport carefully. His purpose of visit: Rhodes Scholarship interview at Oxford. His demeanor shifted slightly. "Congratulations, and how long will you be staying?" The question I'd been dreading. I'm not sure. Possibly just a few days, possibly longer if I won, if I escaped, if I became who I was meant to be. If you're successful with the scholarship? Yes. He studied me a moment longer, then stamped the passport. Best of luck, Miss Harper. Welcome to the United Kingdom. Relief flooded through me. First hurdle cleared. I followed signs toward the exit, merging with the river of humanity that flows through Heathrow every morning. Business suits mingled with backpackers, families reunited with tears and flowers, and one American girl carrying secrets heavier than her luggage. Ara Harper. I spun around. A woman in a crisp Oxford uniform stood nearby holding a sign with my name. I'm Dr. Williams from the Rhodes Trust. We thought you might appreciate a escort to Oxford given the circumstances. My confusion must have shown. Judge Blackwood called ahead, she explained with a subtle smile. She felt you might encounter difficulties. Shall we... Eleanor, still protecting me from an ocean away. Dr. Williams led me through the airport with easy authority, bypassing the chaos of public transportation for a waiting car. Have you been to England before? She asked as we pulled onto the motorway. Never. I've barely been out of Ohio. Then let me be the first to properly welcome you. That's Windsor Castle to your right. We'll pass through several historic towns on the way to Oxford. The journey takes about an hour, giving you time to rest or prepare. Actually, could you tell me about the interview process? I want to be ready. She smiled. It varies, but typically there are 2 stages. First, a presentation of your research to a panel of experts in your field. Then a general interview with the full committee. They'll ask about your goals, your character, your ability to handle challenges. What kind of challenges? Oh, the usual. Academic pressure, cultural adjustment, ethical dilemmas. Her eyes met mine in the mirror. Family opposition. So Eleanor had told them everything. Will it hurt my chances? On the contrary, overcoming adversity demonstrates resilience. And your particular situation, she paused carefully, let's just say the committee has strong feelings about families who steal opportunities from brilliant young women. The English countryside rolled past like a Jane Austen novel come to life. Green fields dotted with sheep villages that looked unchanged since Shakespeare's time, and gradually the spires of Oxford rising from morning mist. There, Dr. Williams pointed, the city of dreaming spires. Your interview is at 2 this afternoon at the examination schools. I'll take you to a hotel where you can rest and prepare. Thank you for everything. Thank Judge Blackwood. She made quite an impression on our board chair at 3 a.m. London time. The hotel was quietly elegant, all dark wood and fresh flowers. My room overlooked a medieval street where students already hurried past on bicycles, black robes fluttering like wings. I had 5 hours to transform from Ara Harper, the girl whose family tried to destroy her, into Ara Harper, the woman who would change the world. I opened my laptop and began reviewing my presentation one final time. The water purification system my birth mother had unknowingly inspired, the research my adoptive parents had tried to steal, the future they'd attempted to deny. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown British number. Miss Harper, this is Dr. Chen from yesterday. The committee is aware of your travel difficulties. Rest assured, we judge candidates on merit, not melodrama. Looking forward to meeting you. P.S. Your birth mother's work on graphene oxide membranes was groundbreaking for its time. Curious coincidence, wouldn't you say? I stared at the message. They knew. They knew about Margaret Chen, about the connection between her research and mine. Had they known all along? Another text and this one from Megan. Made it to Chicago. Beth's letting me stay indefinitely. Starting community college next week. Actual classes I chose myself. Parents called 20 times, but I'm not answering. They made their choices. Time to make ours. Go show Oxford what Harper women can really do. The real ones, not the manufactured ones. 3 hours until interview. I ordered room service proper English breakfast with tea strong enough to build empires and spread my materials across the bed. Research papers, data analysis, the prototype specifications that could bring clean water to millions. This wasn't just about escaping anymore. It was about becoming. The hotel phone rang. Reception informed me a package had arrived. Minutes later, a bellhop delivered an elegant box. Inside a note in Eleanor's distinctive handwriting, "Every warrior needs proper armor. Knock them dead." A silk scarf in Oxford blue, a leather portfolio embossed with my initials, a fountain pen that probably cost more than my parents spent on Megan's pageant gowns. And at the bottom, a small frame photo I recognized from Megan's envelope, Margaret Chen in a laboratory smiling at something beyond the camera. I propped the photo on the desk where I could see it. My birth mother and I working together across time and death, both reaching for the same dream. 2 hours now. I showered, dressed carefully, wrapped Eleanor's scarf around my neck like a talisman. The woman in the mirror looked ready for anything. My phone rang. Unknown number, American area code. Against my better judgment, I answered. Ara, Dad's voice, but different. Smaller, defeated. "Don't hang up, please!" "You have 30 seconds. The lawyers. They found everything. The trust manipulation, the document theft, Megan's plagiarized applications. We're going to lose everything." "That's not my problem anymore." "I know. His voice cracked. "I wanted to hear your voice, to tell you that somewhere under all the jealousy and fear, I'm proud of you. We raised you wrong, tried to make you less than you are, but you became brilliant anyway, despite us. Maybe because you had to fight us." "Dad, win that scholarship, Ara. Show them what Margaret Chen's daughter can do. What our daughter, because you'll always be that too, even if we don't deserve you, what you can become when nobody's holding you back." The line went dead. I sat on the bed, emotions I couldn't name washing through me. 1 hour. Time to stop looking backward. Time to face forward toward spires and dreams and the future I'd fought to claim. A knock at the door. Dr. Williams, prompt and professional. "Ready, Miss Harper." I gathered my materials, my courage, my birthright of brilliance and ambition. "Ready." Oxford waited, ancient and eternal. The committee waited, prepared to judge and invest. My future waited, infinite with possibility. But first, one interview, one chance. One girl with water in her veins and revolution in her heart, ready to prove that some legacies can't be stolen. Some dreams can't be killed, and some daughters are destined to rise no matter who tries to drown them. The city of dreaming spires had no idea what was coming. Neither did I. The examination school's building loomed before me like something from a Gothic novel, all carved stone and leaded windows that had watched centuries of dreams made and broken. Dr. Williams led me through corridors that smelled of old wood and ambition, our footsteps echoing off marble floors worn smooth by generations of anxious feet like mine. "The committee is in the North School," Bugchi said. "Your presentation room is prepared. Remember, they're not just evaluating your research, they're investing in your potential to create change." We paused outside an imposing oak door. Inside, I could hear muted voices, the shuffle of papers, the weight of judgment preparing itself. "One more thing," Dr. Williams said quietly. "David Ashford is here." "Who?" "Journalist. He's been investigating education fraud, particularly cases involving stolen research and family exploitation. He requested permission to observe your interview. Highly unusual, but given your circumstances." My stomach dropped. They want to make me a story. "They want to protect you. On the record, your parents' lawyers can't claim coercion or manipulation if there's an independent witness." She smiled slightly. "Besides, Mr. Ashford has a particular interest in cases where brilliant women overcome systemic obstacles. His mother was one of the first female Rhodes Scholars." Before I could process this, the door opened. A woman with silver hair and piercing eyes examined me with the intensity of someone who'd spent decades identifying potential. Miss Harper, I'm Professor Elizabeth Hartwell Committee Chair. Are you ready? No, yes, maybe, absolutely. The room beyond was both grand and intimate. Wood paneling climbed toward a coffered ceiling. Portraits of former scholars gazed down with oil-painted expectation. The committee, 5 individuals who held my future in their hands, sat behind a curved table that looked older than America. And in the corner, unobtrusive but alert, sat a man about 30 with the kind of intense focus that marked him as someone who missed nothing. David Ashford, I presumed. Our eyes met briefly. He nodded, almost imperceptibly. An ally or an opportunist, time would tell. Miss Harper, Professor Hartwell began. We've reviewed your application extensively. Your research on graphene oxide membrane technology for water purification is impressive. But before we discuss the science, perhaps you could address the rather unusual circumstances of your arrival. Straight to the heart. No polite British circling of difficult topics. I thought of the flight attendant's advice. Honesty over perfection. 3 days ago, I discovered my passport had been stolen by my family to prevent me from attending this interview. With the help of my aunt, a federal judge, and my mentor, Professor Martinez, I obtained an emergency replacement and flew here against my parents' wishes. I've since learned that what I thought was simple jealousy was actually an orchestrated attempt to prevent me from claiming an inheritance left by my birth mother, an inheritance that includes both financial resources and intellectual property related to the very research I'm presenting today. Silence thick as Thames fog. Then, unexpectedly, one of the committee members, a younger woman with kind eyes, spoke. How did you discover your connection to Dr. Margaret Chen? They knew her name, of course they did. Yesterday, my adopted sister provided documents showing that my birth mother was a biochemist who pioneered early work in graphene oxide applications. I've been unknowingly following in her footsteps, drawn to the same solutions for the same problems. Nature or nurture, Professor Hartwell mused. An eternal question, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Please present your research. Show us how Margaret Chen's daughter plans to change the world. The next 45 minutes flew by in a blur of equations and explanations. I'd presented this research dozens of times, but never with such weight behind it. As I explained how modified graphene oxide membranes could provide clean drinking water at a fraction of current costs, I felt my birth mother's presence like a hand on my shoulder. The committee asked probing questions about scalability, about manufacturing challenges, about distribution in developing nations. I answered with the confidence of someone who'd lived this research, breathed it, dreamed it into being. Your prototype achieved 99.9% contaminant removal. A committee member with thick glasses leaned forward. In laboratory conditions, yes. Field testing in rural Ohio showed 98.7%, still exceeding WHO standards. And the cost per unit? Currently $12 to produce a filter that can purify 1,000 gallons. With scaled manufacturing, we project $3 per unit within 2 years. Remarkable, he made notes. Dr. Chen would be proud. The personal interview that followed felt more like a conversation than an interrogation. They asked about my goals, bringing clean water to 1 billion people within a decade, my challenges learning to trust after family betrayal, my character defined by persistence rather than perfection. David Ashford never spoke, but his presence influenced everything. The committee couldn't dismiss me as another sob story when a journalist was documenting every word. My parents couldn't claim I'd been manipulated when an independent witness observed the entire process. One final question, Professor Hartwell said. Your family attempted to steal not just your opportunity, but your identity, your inheritance, your future. How do you move forward from such betrayal? the question I'd been dreading and expecting in equal measure. By understanding that their limitations don't define mine, I said slowly, my adoptive parents saw success as a zero-sum game. If I won, they lost. But my birth mother left me a different legacy. She believed in abundance, in creating solutions that lift everyone. I choose her vision. And your sister, the one who helped you escape, she's starting community college in Chicago. We're both learning that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choosing to lift each other up instead of tear each other down. Professor Hartwell smiled for the first time. Thank you, Miss Harper. We'll notify you of our decision within 24 hours. As I gathered my materials, she added quietly, your birth mother interviewed in this very room 26 years ago. Different committee, same dreams. History has a way of completing circles. I walked out on unsteady legs. Dr. Williams waited in the corridor, her expression carefully neutral. How do you feel it went? Like I just performed surgery on my own soul in front of an audience. She laughed. That's generally a good sign. Come, let's get you some tea. Very British solution to all forms of emotional exhaustion. But David Ashford intercepted us at the building's entrance. Up close, he looked tired but determined, like someone who'd been chasing truth through too many time zones. Miss Harper, I'm David Ashford, the Guardian. I wonder if we might speak. I don't want to be a story, not yet. Neither did I 10 years ago. He smiled wryly. My mother was one of the first female Rhodes Scholars, 1965. Her family disowned her for abandoning her duties as a daughter. Sound familiar? We found ourselves in a cafe that probably existed when Shakespeare was young. Over proper English tea strong enough to strip paint, David told his own story, a mother who'd fought for her education, a family that never forgave her success, a son who'd become a journalist to document the obstacles brilliant women still faced. Your case isn't unique, he said. I've investigated dozens of families who sabotage their daughter's potential, but yours has something special. Whoa, what's that? Evidence. Your sister's recordings. The trust documents the clear connection between your research and your birth mother's work. It's a provable case of intergenerational theft, not just of money, but of legacy. I don't want revenge. I just want to move forward. Well, what if moving forward helps others? Your story could protect future students from similar exploitation. My phone buzzed. Eleanor checking in from Ohio where it was barely morning. Then Martinez sending encouragement between classes. Then, surprisingly, Megan. Turn on BBC News, her text read. Now. David was already pulling up the feed on his phone. There on the screen, my parents being led from their house in handcuffs. The headline scrolled past, American couple arrested for trust fund fraud, attempted identity theft of adopted daughter. That was fast. I breathed. David watched me carefully. The feds don't mess around when there's clear financial fraud. Your aunt must have pushed hard. The news segment included a photo of me from the state science fair, standing beside my water purification prototype. They'd found the worst picture possible, exhausted, oil-stained hair escaping from a ponytail. But I was smiling, like I discovered the secret of the universe. Maybe I had. Will you let me tell your story? David asked. Not the sensational version parents' arrested family destroyed, the real version, about a young woman who inherited more than money from a mother she never knew, about research that could save lives, about breaking cycles of control and choosing your own legacy. I thought about Margaret Chen dying young but ensuring her daughter would have choices, about Eleanor successful and alone until she chose to save me, about Megan finally free to discover who she was without our parents' scripts, about Martinez and my professors, the chosen family who'd fought for my future. After the Rhodes decision, I said finally, whatever happens tomorrow, I want to face it without the weight of public opinion. Then, yes, tell the story. Maybe it helps someone else escape. Maybe it helps someone else understand they're not alone. We shook hands across centuries-old wood worn smooth by similar bargains. Then David left to chase other truths, and I walked back through Oxford's ancient streets, feeling the weight of history and the lightness of possibility in equal measure. My phone rang, Professor Hartwell's distinctive accent. Miss Harper, I know we said 24 hours, but the committee has reached a unanimous decision. Might you return to the examination schools? There's something we'd like to discuss. My heart stopped, started, raced toward a future I couldn't quite see but felt pulling me forward like gravity. On my way. The dreaming spires watched as I half walked, half ran through streets that had seen centuries of students chase their futures. In my bag, Margaret Chen's photograph. In my pocket, Eleanor's business card. In my heart, the certainty that whatever came next, I'd earned it, not despite my story, but because of it. The committee was waiting. My future was waiting. And for the first time in my life, I was running towards something instead of away. The committee room looked different in late afternoon light. Golden sun slanted through tall windows, turning dust motes into tiny celebrations. The same 5 faces waited behind the curved table, but something had shifted in their expressions. Professor Hartwell stood as I entered, an unusual breach of formal protocol. Miss Harper, thank you for returning so quickly. Please sit. My legs felt disconnected from my body as I took the candidate's chair. David Ashford was gone. This moment belonged only to us. We've made our decision, Professor Hartwell began, but first we owe you an explanation. This morning, after your interview concluded, we received a call from Chen Biotech's current CEO. Are you familiar with the company? My birth mother's father founded it. That's all I know. Dr. James Chen, your grandfather. He's been searching for you for 22 years. The room tilted. I gripped the chair's arms. He knew about the adoption. Of course, he'd approved it, believing the Harpers were distant relatives who would honor Margaret's memory. When they cut communication and moved states, he lost track. Private investigators found nothing. The Harpers had buried your trail thoroughly. But how did he... Your research? Professor Hartwell smiled. 6 months ago, you published a paper on graphene oxide applications. It used a specific mathematical approach that Margaret had developed but never published. Her father recognized it immediately. His daughter's equations refined and expanded by her daughter's mind. Tears blurred my vision. Even from beyond death, my mother had been calling to her family through formulas and solutions. He contacted us after seeing your Rhodes application, wanting to know if the Ara Harper working on water purification could possibly be his lost granddaughter. We couldn't violate confidentiality, but we could investigate. What we found? She gestured to my scattered life. Well, does he want to meet you desperately, to support your work absolutely. Chen Biotech has offered full funding for your research, no strings attached. They want Margaret's daughter to complete what she started. One of the other committee members, the kind-eyed woman from earlier, leaned forward. Which brings us to our decision. Miss Harper, the Rhodes Trust exists to identify and support individuals who will, as Cecil Rhodes wrote, esteem the performance of public duties as their highest aim. Your research serves humanity. Your perseverance inspires others. Your story demonstrates that brilliance can survive any attempt to diminish it. Professor Hartwell picked up an envelope embossed with the Rhodes Trust seal. Era Marie Harper, the committee unanimously awards you the Rhodes Scholarship to pursue your DPhil in engineering science at Oxford University. Congratulations. The words hit like physical force. I'd imagined this moment 1,000 times, but reality felt surreal. The envelope shook in my hands as I accepted it, the weight of possibility heavier than paper should be. Thank you, I managed. I don't thank you. There's more, Professor Hartwell continued. Given your unique circumstances, we're activating emergency provisions. You'll have access to scholarship funds immediately, including housing, living expenses, and research support. Dr. Williams will help you navigate immigration requirements for an extended stay. Additionally, the kind-eyed woman added, St. Catherine's College has already expressed interest in having you join their engineering program. Professor David Randolph, who leads their water resource research group, is particularly eager to collaborate. They were offering more than an education. They were offering a new life built on merit rather than manipulation. What about my parents? The legal situation? Professor Hartwell's expression hardened slightly. Academic fraud is taken seriously here. Any attempts to interfere with your studies will be met with the full force of both British educational law and Chen Biotech's legal department. Your grandfather is protective. A grandfather. I had a grandfather who'd spent 2 decades searching for me. Would it be appropriate to contact him? He's actually in London on business. She slid a business card across the table. He'll wait for you to be ready, but I suspect sooner might be better than later. 22 years is a long time to grieve a daughter and granddaughter simultaneously. I stared at the card. Dr. James Chen, CEO and founder, a phone number that could connect me to the family I should have known. Take your time, Professor Hartwell said gently. You've had tremendous shocks in a very short period, but know this, you're no longer alone. The Rhodes community, St. Catherine's College, your birth family, and your chosen family all stand ready to support you. We discussed logistics, term start dates, visa requirements, research facility access. My mind struggled to keep up with the transformation of my life. 3 days ago, I'd been a girl whose parents stole her passport. Now I was a Rhodes Scholar with a biotechnology legacy and a grandfather waiting to reclaim me. As the meeting concluded, Professor Hartwell shook my hand with both of hers. Margaret would be so proud. You've not only inherited her brilliance, but transcended the circumstances that stole her from you. That takes a special kind of courage. I walked out of the examination schools as the sun set over Oxford, painting the spires rose gold. The city that had seemed like an impossible dream 3 days ago was now my home for the next 3 years. The envelope in my hand felt like a key to every door that had been locked against me. My phone had exploded with messages while I was inside. Eleanor somehow already knowing, "Congratulations, darling girl, now the real work begins." Martinez, "Knew it lab is celebrating, send pictures of everything." Megan, "Saw the news about parents. Crazy times, but heard from a little bird you might have good news, so proud of you, sis." But it was the last message that stopped me cold, an unknown British number. "Dear Ara, I understand you've received tremendous news today. I won't presume upon your time or emotions, but if you're willing, I'd very much like to meet my granddaughter. I'm at the Randolph Hotel, will be here all week. No pressure, no expectations. Just a grandfather who's waited a very long time to say hello, James Chen." I stood on the ancient street, Rhodes Scholar letter in one hand, grandfather's message in the other. Around me, Oxford continued its eternal dance, students cycling past in academic robes, bells chiming the hour history, and future colliding in every stone. Clean water for millions, a family rediscovered, a future unfolding like graphene oxide layers, each sheet revealing new possibilities. I typed back, "Would tomorrow morning work? I have so many questions, and maybe some answers too. Ara." His response came immediately. "I'll clear my entire day. Thank you for giving me hope." Hope. Such a small word for such a vast feeling. 3 days ago, I'd had none. Now it flooded through me like water through one of my purification membranes, transformed, clarified, ready to sustain life. The Randolph Hotel glowed in the distance, a Victorian landmark where past and present met. Tomorrow, I'd walk through those doors and meet the family that science and stubbornness had returned to me. Tonight, I had calls to make, tears to cry, and dreams to reshape around this new reality. But first, I stopped at the Bridge of Sighs, Oxford's most photographed landmark. Legend said students who walked under it would finish their degrees successfully. Superstition, but after the week I'd take all the luck available. As I passed beneath the bridge, I thought I heard whispers, centuries of students who'd crossed from one life to another, who'd arrived as one person and left as someone else entirely. Margaret Chen might have walked this same path carrying the same dreams, never knowing her daughter would follow decades later. "I made it, Mom," I whispered to the evening air. "Despite everything, because of everything, I made it." The spires dreamed on indifferent and eternal, but I swear I felt an answer in the wind that swept through the ancient streets, a mother's pride echoing across time, a promise that some inheritances transcend death, and a certainty that the best was yet to come. Tomorrow would bring grandfather's tears and childhood stories and the weight of recovered history. Tonight was for quiet celebration, for grateful messages to those who'd fought beside me for standing in the city of dreams and knowing I'd earned my place among them. The water purification system that would save lives, the family that would heal wounds, the future that no amount of theft or jealousy could steal. All of it flowed from this moment, this place, this girl who'd refused to be diminished. Oxford's bells chimed 8 o'clock, and I finally understood what home meant. Not a place or a person or a building, but a feeling, the certainty that you're exactly where you're meant to be, doing exactly what you're meant to do, becoming exactly who you were born to become. Margaret Chen's daughter, James Chen's granddaughter, Era Harper, Rhodes Scholar. The transformation was complete. The real journey had just begun. Morning arrived dressed in typical English gray mist, wrapping around Oxford's spires like protective cotton. I'd barely slept, my mind cycling between elation and terror. In 3 hours, I would meet my grandfather, a man who'd searched for me for 22 years, who'd recognized his daughter's equations in my published work, who represented a history I'd never known existed. I dressed carefully in the second suit Eleanor had insisted on buying, professional but not cold confident but approachable, the kind of outfit that said granddaughter worth finding without seeming calculated. My phone buzzed with a message from David Ashford. "Heard the wonderful news. When you're ready to tell your story, I'm here. No pressure. Some reunions deserve privacy first." He was right. This moment belonged to family, the real kind, not the manufactured version I'd escaped. The Randolph Hotel sat elegantly on Beaumont Street, all Victorian grandeur and polished brass. I'd walked past it yesterday, another tourist admiring architecture. Now I entered as someone with a claim to its spaces, its stories. "I'm meeting James Chen," I told the concierge, proud my voice didn't shake. "Of course, Miss Harper. Dr. Chen is in the Lancaster suite. Shall I announce you?" "Please." The elevator ride lasted forever and an instant. At the suite's door, I paused, hand raised to knock. Inside waited answers to questions I hadn't known to ask. A grandfather who might see his daughter in my face. A connection to Margaret Chen that went beyond DNA and research. The door opened before I could knock. The man standing there was 70-something but carried himself like someone who'd never acknowledged age as a limitation. His eyes, my eyes, I realized with a shock, were already wet with tears. Ara. Just my name, but weighted with 2 decades of searching, hoping, grieving. Dr. Chen, grandfather. The word felt foreign, but right. "Please come in. Forgive me. I promised myself I wouldn't cry immediately," he laughed shakily, stepping aside. "Failed that resolution spectacularly." The suite was elegant, but lived in. Laptops and papers covered a dining table. Photos scattered across every surface, and there, enlarged and framed by the window, was my birth mother holding an infant. Holding me. "That was taken 3 days before the accident," he said quietly. She was so happy, had just finished her preliminary water purification research, couldn't wait to get back to the lab. She was going to change the world, she said, through science and through you. I touched the photo gently. What was she like? Brilliant, stubborn, convinced every problem had a solution if you just approached it from the right angle, he smiled, rather like someone else I've recently learned about. We sat across from each other, 22 years of separation, creating awkward space between us. Where to begin? How to bridge decades in a morning? Your parents, the Harpers, they were distant cousins through marriage, he began. When Margaret died, I was destroyed. Couldn't care for an infant while running a company and drowning in grief. They seemed stable kind, promised to raise you knowing your heritage. What changed? Money troubles, I think. They asked for larger and larger payments from the trust. When I suggested visits instead of checks, they disappeared. Moved states, changed phone numbers. My investigators found Trace's school enrollments, address changes, but never you specifically. They told me I was theirs. Never mentioned adoption until I found the papers 3 days ago. His face darkened. I've been following the news. What they did, the theft, the sabotage, trying to steal your work and future, it's unforgivable. They're facing federal charges. Good. I've instructed my lawyers to pursue civil action as well, not for vengeance, but to ensure they can never hurt you again. We talked for hours, filling in gaps. He showed me photos Margaret as a child winning science fairs like I would decades later. Margaret in college surrounded by male classmates who underestimated her. Margaret in her lab working on the equations I'd somehow inherited. She would have loved your membrane modification approach, he said, pulling up my published papers on his laptop. See here where you use graphene oxide layers. She theorized something similar but lacked the technology to implement it. It's strange. I developed that technique thinking it was original, but it feels inherited. Inevitable, like my hands knew what to do before my brain caught up. He nodded slowly. Margaret believed in genetic memory, not mystically, but scientifically, that repeated behaviors, especially in pursuit of survival, needs like clean water could create predispositions in offspring. Nature and nurture working together. Precisely, he leaned forward. Era, I want to be clear about something. Chen Biotech's offer to fund your research comes with no strings. You don't owe me anything. Not time, not relationship, not even acknowledgement if you prefer privacy. But I hope you'll let me be part of your life, not as a CEO or funding source, but as a grandfather who's missed 22 years of birthdays and science fairs and accomplishments. Tears threatened again. I'd like that. I've had enough of transactional family relationships. As have I. He pulled out a folder. I've brought some things. Legal documents, of course. The trust is yours fully and immediately. My lawyers have already begun transferring control. But also, he handed me a leather journal. Margaret's research notes. Her original work on water purification. I thought you might want to see where your journey began. I opened the journal carefully. My mother's handwriting filled pages with equations and observations. Marginalia included shopping lists, reminders to call her father, and in one corner a small note, baby kicked during polymer synthesis. Future scientist. She knew, I whispered. She suspected. Said you were most active during her lab time, like you were participating. His voice broke slightly. She had so many plans for you. Science camps, research trips, a custom periodic table nursery mobile. I grew up in a hardware store stockroom, hiding chemistry textbooks from parents who thought ambition was dangerous. And yet you found your way to exactly where she hoped you'd be. That's not coincidence, Era. That's destiny refusing to be denied. A knock interrupted us. Room service arrived with proper English breakfast, ordered by a grandfather who somehow knew I'd been too nervous to eat. Over eggs and revelation, we planned next steps. I'd finish my doctorate at Oxford fully funded. Chen Biotech would provide lab access and resources. But more importantly, we'd build the relationship stolen from us carefully, patiently, the way trust reforms after betrayal. There's a Chen family reunion in Singapore next month, he mentioned casually. About 40 cousins, aunts, uncles, all scientists, engineers or married to them. No pressure, but they're dying to meet Margaret's daughter. 40 relatives. After 22 years of small, suffocating family, the number seemed impossible. Start small if you prefer. Your Aunt Linda Margaret's younger sister is in London next week. She's a pediatric surgeon, has twins about your age. They grew up hearing stories about their missing cousin. Family, real family, not perfect, probably complicated, but united by curiosity and accomplishment rather than control and limitation. I'd like to meet them, all of them eventually. I paused. Will they be disappointed that I didn't grow up knowing about Margaret about them? Disappointed? He looked genuinely puzzled. Ara, you found your way to water purification without knowing it was in your blood. You earned a Rhodes Scholarship while fighting your own family. You survived what would have broken others? They'll be amazed. We talked until afternoon, tea covering decades and hours. He showed me Chen Biotech's latest projects, including water purification systems based on my published research. I shared my plans for the roads, my dreams of providing clean water to developing nations. Margaret wanted to start in Bangladesh, he said. She'd visited during a college trip, saw children dying from waterborne diseases. It haunted her. Then that's where I'll start. Complete her vision. Our vision, he corrected gently. 3 generations of Chen scientists working across time. As afternoon faded, I realized I needed to ask the hardest question. Why did she die? He was quiet for a long moment. Car accident. Rainy night, drunk driver ran a red light. She was coming home from the lab, had called to say she'd had a breakthrough. Was so excited. His voice dropped. The other driver walked away uninjured. The universe has a cruel sense of timing. I'm sorry. I've had 22 years to make peace with it. What I couldn't make peace with was losing you too. Until 6 months ago when I read an article about novel graphene oxide applications by an A. Harper from Ohio State. The math was so familiar, I dropped my coffee. Spent the next week confirming what my heart already knew. Margaret's daughter was alive, brilliant, and continuing her work. Why didn't you reach out then? You were in the middle of the Rhodes application. I didn't want to disrupt your life with shocking revelations. Planned to wait until after, then your parents. He gestured helplessly. Well, their cruelty led me to you. Silver lining, graphene oxide lining, filters out impurities, leaves only what matters. We both smiled at the science joke. Margaret would have approved. As I prepared to leave, he handed me one last item, a small box wrapped in silk. Your mother wore this to every important presentation, said it brought clarity. Inside was a simple necklace, a water molecule in silver H2O rendered in delicate metal. It's perfect. As are you. He helped me fasten it, grandfather hands, gentle with granddaughter trust. Ara, I know we can't recover 22 years, but we can make the next 22 count. Starting now, I agreed. We hugged goodbye, awkward but real. I left with journals and photos, bank accounts and business cards, but most importantly, with roots. Not the twisted kind that trapped and strangled, but the deep kind that nourished and supported growth. Outside, the Randolph Oxford looked different. Not changed, but clarified. Like water through a perfect filter, my vision had cleared to show not just dreaming spires, but possibility spires. Each building, each stone, each student hurrying past represented potential to discover, connect, create. My phone buzzed. Megan. Enrolled in chemistry classes. Teacher says I show promise. Who knew? Maybe science runs in chosen families too. I smiled, typing back. Definitely does. Can't wait to see what you discover. The walk back to my hotel took longer than necessary. I stopped at every beautiful building, every historic marker, every glimpse of the Thames winding through ancient streets. This was home now. Not just Oxford, but the life I'd fought to claim. The grandfather I'd found through equations. The future I'd build on my mother's foundation. As evening painted the sky purple, I fingered the water molecule at my throat. H2O. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Simple elements that combined to create life that could be purified and shared, that connected all humanity in fundamental need. Margaret Chen had understood that. James Chen continued it, and Ara Harper Rhodes Scholar granddaughter water revolutionary would complete it. The interview of a lifetime was over. The work of a lifetime had just begun. The days following my grandfather's revelation passed in a blur of paperwork and possibility. I'd moved from the hotel to a small flat near the St. Catherine's College engineering department funded by the scholarship that still felt surreal. The space was tiny by American standards, a single room with a kitchenette and a window overlooking medieval rooftops. But it was mine. No one could steal the key or cancel the lease or tell me I didn't deserve it. My desk faced that window, and on it sat 3 photographs: Margaret Chen in her lab, Eleanor at her judicial swearing-in, and surprisingly, when Megan had texted of herself at her first chemistry class, safety goggles comically large on her face. My chosen family of fighters and survivors. The morning everything changed again started with typical English drizzle. I was reviewing my research presentation for the St. Catherine's faculty when my phone erupted with notifications. Not the gentle buzz of routine messages, but the insistent storm of crisis. Eleanor's name appeared first. "Call me immediately. Don't read the news first. Let me explain." But of course I read the news first. Prominent Ohio couple's fraud extends beyond adopted daughter. The article detailed how federal investigators, following the threads of my parents' theft, had uncovered a massive network of financial fraud. The hardware store had been a front for money laundering. The pageant expenses that nearly bankrupted us were covers for embezzlement. And at the center of it all, Frank and Diane Harper had built an empire of deception that my existence had threatened to expose. My phone rang. "Eleanor." "I told you not to read it first," she said without preamble. "How bad?" 26 counts of fraud, 4 counts of money laundering, interstate commerce violations, identity theft, not just yours, multiple victims. Your college fund wasn't the first trust they'd raided. I sank onto my narrow bed. "Megan." She's safe, cooperating fully with authorities. Actually, she's the one who broke this open. Found documents while retrieving her belongings, brought them straight to the FBI. She could have just walked away. She's done walking away, says she learned from the best. Eleanor's voice softened. "How are you processing this?" "I don't know. Part of me feels vindicated. Part of me feels sick. They're still the people who raised me, even if they raised me wrong." "That's natural. Complicated grief for a complicated situation. Have you spoken with Dr. Chen?" "He's flying back from Singapore today. Insisted on being here in case I need support." "Good. You shouldn't face this alone." She paused. "There's more, Ara. The investigation revealed something about your adoption." My stomach dropped. "What?" "Your birth mother's accident. The drunk driver who killed her, his legal bills were paid by an anonymous benefactor. 3 guesses who?" The phone slipped from numb fingers. I fumbled to recover it, Eleanor's voice distant through the roaring in my ears. "Then the Harpers?" They knew Margaret had designated them as guardians if anything happened to her. They also knew about the trust, the patents, the potential fortune. The investigation hasn't found direct evidence of conspiracy, but they benefited from her death. Enormously. I stood abruptly, needing to move to escape the suddenly suffocating flat. "I have to go." "Ara, I'll call you back." I hung up and stumbled into Oxford's gray morning. The ancient streets that had felt like sanctuary now seemed complicit in hiding centuries of secrets. How many students had walked these stones carrying unbearable truths? How many had discovered that their origins were built on tragedy and greed? My feet carried me unconsciously toward the Thames to the college boathouses where early morning crews practiced despite the drizzle. The rhythmic splash of oars cut through my spinning thoughts. Order in chaos. Teamwork in isolation, moving forward even when the destination wasn't clear. Rough morning. I turned to find David Ashford looking like he'd been awake all night. Journalist instincts probably monitoring the breaking news about my family. You heard. Following the story, yeah, though I didn't expect this magnitude. He studied me carefully. Want to talk off the record, just human to human. We found a bench under a bridge rain, pattering around us, but not on us. I told him everything: the money laundering, the expanded fraud, the possible connection to Margaret's death. Christ, he breathed when I finished, and I thought my family dysfunction was bad. The worst part is not knowing. Did they plan it? Was it opportunity seized or tragedy orchestrated? I'll never have answers. Maybe that's better. Some truths are too heavy to carry. Is that your journalistic opinion? That's my human opinion. The journalist in me knows you'll always wonder. It's the not knowing that haunts us. My phone buzzed. Megan. Saw the news. In protective custody, but safe. Agent says I'm a hero for finding the documents. Funny how doing the right thing feels heroic when you've spent 22 years doing wrong. Love you. I showed David the text. He smiled grimly. Both Harper daughters breaking free. There's poetry in that. Expensive poetry? She lost everything too. Did she find herself? Another texted this one from Professor Martinez. Department meeting voted unanimously. If you need to return to testify, we'll cover all expenses. Also, Dr. Patel says to tell you the lab misses its favorite overachiever. Then another from my grandfather. Landed at Heathrow. Available whenever you need me. Remember, their crimes don't diminish your worth. Love, James. The rain intensified, driving us from our shelter toward a nearby cafe. Over proper English breakfast, apparently the solution to all crises, David asked the question I'd been avoiding. Will you testify if it goes to trial? Yes. Even knowing it could take months, interfere with your studies. They stole 22 years of truth from me. I won't let them steal justice too. He nodded approvingly. Your story gets more powerful by the day. Sure you don't want to tell it now while public attention is focused. After the trials, when I can tell all of it, including the ending. Fair enough. Though I should warn you, other journalists won't wait. Your name's already trending. Brilliant daughter escapes criminal family makes irresistible headlines. As if summoned by his words, my phone rang. Unknown number, American area code. Miss Harper, this is Patricia Williams from CNN. We'd love to interview you about... I hung up, then blocked the number, then turned off my phone entirely. That'll multiply exponentially, David warned. You need a plan. My plan is to focus on my research. Let the lawyers handle the legal drama. Admirable. Unrealistic, but admirable. St. Catherine's College appeared through the rain, solid and sanctuary-like. My afternoon meeting with Professor Randolph beckoned a chance to discuss research instead of revenge solutions, instead of secrets. I should go, I said. Real life calls. This is real life too, David countered gently. The messy, complicated, sometimes criminal parts. Don't compartmentalize so much that you fragment. Good advice from someone who lived in other people's tragedies. I promised to consider it and headed toward the college, leaving him to his full English and fuller notebook. Professor Randolph's office occupied a corner of the engineering building, every surface covered with water samples, filtration models, and photos from fieldwork in developing nations. He greeted me with distracted enthusiasm, clearly someone who lived more in molecules than mundane reality. Harper, excellent timing. I've been reviewing your graphene oxide work. Fascinating approach to layer alignment. Tell me, have you considered biomimetic applications? For an hour, we talked pure science. No fraud, no family drama, no tragic origins, just the beautiful puzzle of making clean water accessible to billions. He showed me his team's work in Bangladesh, Kenya, Peru, places where waterborne diseases killed more children than all the criminal parents in the world. Your membrane technology could revolutionize our field stations, he said, pulling up diagrams. We've been using traditional filters, but the replacement cost is prohibitive. If your graphene oxide layers are as durable as you claim, does 97% efficiency after 10,000 gallons. We could extend that with proper pre-filtration. Brilliant. I want you on my next field expedition. March Bangladesh. See the problems firsthand. Bangladesh, where Margaret had wanted to start, where her dreams waited for completion. Yes, I said immediately. Absolutely yes. We spent another hour planning, discussing logistics and challenges and the 1,000 details that transformed theory into lives saved. When I finally left his office, evening had arrived with clearer skies and calmer heart. My phone turned back on, showed 57 missed calls, journalists mostly, 3 from Eleanor updating the legal situation, 1 from my grandfather saying he was at the Randolph again if I needed him, and 1 voicemail from a number I didn't recognize but somehow knew. Ara, it's Mom. Diane Harper's voice sounded smaller than I'd ever heard it. I know you hate us. You should. We destroyed everything good in your life, but I need you to know we didn't plan Margaret's death. We're guilty of so much, but not that. The driver came forward after seeing the news. He's willing to testify that no one paid him that. It was just stupid drunk tragedy. I know it doesn't change anything. I know we're still monsters who stole your life, but you shouldn't have to carry that question forever. You deserve at least that much truth. The message ended with a soft sob. I played it twice more, parsing words for deception and finding only defeat. Did I believe her? Did it matter? They'd still capitalized on tragedy, still stolen my inheritance and identity, still tried to clip wings they had no right to touch. But maybe David was wrong. Maybe some truths were exactly heavy enough, not crushing, just clarifying. The Harpers hadn't killed my mother. They just killed her memory, which was its own kind of murder. I texted my grandfather, "Free for dinner, I need family, the real kind." His response came instantly, always, the Randolph dining room, 7 o'clock, bringing someone who wants to meet you. At 7 precisely, I entered the hotel's elegant dining room to find my grandfather seated with a woman who looked startlingly like Margaret's photos, just older and softer. My grandfather said, standing. "This is your Aunt Linda." She rose, 2 tears already falling. "You look just like her, just like my sister." Another piece of my stolen history returned, another connection rebuilt from scattered atoms. We talked through dinner and beyond, Linda filling gaps with stories of Margaret's childhood, their shared love of science, the grief that had shaped 22 years. She showed me photos on her phone, cousins I'd never met, family gatherings I'd missed, a whole life running parallel to my isolation. "We searched," she said. "Every year on your birthday, we'd hire new investigators, but the Harpers were thorough in their erasure." "I'm here now," I said. "We all are." "Yes," my grandfather agreed, raising his water glass with a small smile. "To found family and found futures." We toasted with water appropriate for engineers and daughters and grandfathers bound by H2O and DNA, and the stubborn refusal to let theft define us. The waiting game was over. Whatever came next, trials, testimony, the weight of public scrutiny, I wouldn't face it alone. Criminal parents had been replaced by chosen family. Stolen inheritance had been reclaimed through merit and molecules. And somewhere in a federal facility, Frank and Diane Harper were learning what I'd always known: water finds its way. Truth filters through, and some daughters are destined to rise no matter how deep you try to drown them. The news cycle would spin on. Journalists would chase stories. Courts would pursue justice. But I had work to do, lives to save, a mother's dream to complete. Everything else was just noise around the essential formula: perseverance plus purpose equals unstoppable force. Let them all watch. I had clean water to create. March arrived in Oxford wearing spring's earliest jewelry, cherry blossoms, and magnolia blooms that made the ancient stones look young again. I'd been in England 6 months now, long enough for the extraordinary to feel routine. Morning runs along the Thames, afternoon research in state-of-the-art laboratories, evening seminars with minds that challenged and expanded my own. The federal trial was set for next month. I'd fly back to testify, face the people who'd raised and ruined me in equal measure. But today held different weight. Today, the Rhodes Committee would announce the incoming scholars at a reception I'd been invited to attend as the newest member of the community. My flat had evolved from empty space to lived-in sanctuary. The desk by the window now held towers of research papers, 3 laptops in various stages of simulation running, and a small army of teacups I kept forgetting to wash. The water molecule necklace from my mother hung from my desk lamp, not worn daily, but always visible, a reminder of inherited purpose. I was reviewing data from our latest membrane tests when my phone rang. The display showed the Rhodes Trust office. "Miss Harper, this is Dr. Chen, the other Dr. Chen." She laughed at the coincidence. "The committee wondered if you might join us an hour early. There's something we'd like to discuss." Intrigue wasn't unusual in Oxford, but the formal request made me nervous. Had something gone wrong with my scholarship? Had my family's criminal proceedings somehow tainted my standing? I arrived at the examination schools to find the committee assembled in the same room where I'd interviewed 6 months ago. The portraits of former scholars seemed to watch with knowing eyes. Era, thank you for coming early." Professor Hartwell gestured to a chair. "We've been monitoring your progress with great interest. Professor Randolph speaks highly of your research advancement." "Thank you. The resources here have been incredible." "Yes, about that." She exchanged glances with other committee members. "We've received an unusual request. The BBC wants to document a year in the life of a Rhodes Scholar. Given your unique story and the humanitarian applications of your research, they've specifically requested to feature you." My stomach tightened. I've been avoiding media attention. "We know, and we respect that. However, this would be different. Not sensationalism about your family situation, but serious documentation of how academic excellence translates to real-world impact. They want to follow your fieldwork in Bangladesh, show the science behind water purification, inspire young women to pursue STEM fields." "When would this start?" "Next month, if you agree. They'd accompany you to Bangladesh, document the implementation process, show how your mother's dream becomes reality through your work." My mother's dream. Everything always circled back to Margaret Chen and the legacy I'd inherited in equations and ambition. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But Era," Professor Hartwell leaned forward, "your story isn't just yours anymore. It belongs to every girl whose family tried to limit her, every student whose potential was nearly stolen. Visibility isn't vanity when it opens doors for others." I left the meeting with too much to process. The reception would start in an hour, bringing together past and current Rhodes scholars in a network that spanned decades and disciplines. I needed air clarity, the kind of wisdom that came from movement. My feet found the familiar path along the Thames. Rowers practiced in perfect synchronization, their coach cycling along the towpath, shouting corrections. Order from chaos. Individual effort creating collective grace. My phone buzzed. "Megan, guess who just got accepted to Northwestern with a scholarship? Turns out I'm good at chemistry when I actually do my own work. Who knew?" I called her immediately. Megan, that's incredible. Right, I mean, it's not Oxford, but considering I started from zero, it's Northwestern. Don't diminish that. You earned this. We both did, her voice softened. Hey, I know the trial's next month. You ready to face them? As ready as anyone can be to testify against their parents. They're not our parents anymore. They're just two people who made terrible choices. We get to make better ones. Wisdom from my pageant queen sister, who'd found her own crown in academic achievement. After we hung up, I stood watching the river flow, thinking about water's persistence. It didn't fight obstacles, it found ways around, overthrough. It transformed landscapes, not through force, but through patience. My phone rang again. David Ashford. Afternoon water, revolutionary. Heard the BBC sniffing around your story. News travels fast in Oxford. Small city, big ambitions. You going to do it? I don't know. My instinct is to stay private, focus on the work. But Professor Hartwell made good points about visibility opening doors for others. Can I share something? His voice grew serious. After my mother became a Rhodes Scholar, she spent years hiding her success because she didn't want to seem like she was bragging or making her family look bad. Know what she regrets most? Not being visible enough for the girls who needed to see someone like them succeeding. You think I should do it? I think you should consider what Margaret Chen would do. The woman who put her research out there, who built a company, who named you in her notes as her future partner. She didn't hide. After we hung up, I made my way back to the examination schools. The reception was already flowing with accomplished humans, making the kind of casual conversation that changed worlds. Nobel laureates discussing weekend plans, tech pioneers debating ethical AI, public servants reshaping policy between canapes. Ara, Professor Randolph appeared at my elbow. Perfect timing. There's someone I want you to meet. Dr. Fatima al-Rashid, running the largest water crisis intervention program in the Middle East. Dr. al-Rashid turned out to be a force of nature wrapped in elegant hijab. Within minutes, she'd extracted my entire research history and was proposing collaboration opportunities that made my head spin. Your membrane technology could solve problems we've been battling for years, she said. But more importantly, you understand water as a human right, not just a technical challenge. That's rare. My mother believed that. My birth mother, I mean. Margaret Chen, I knew her work. Brilliant woman, terrible loss. She studied me with sharp eyes. You know, she gave a talk at my university when I was an undergraduate. Someone asked why she focused on water instead of more lucrative research. She said, because a mother's first gift to her child is the water of life, and every child deserves that gift clean and abundant. Made quite an impression. Tears threatened. Even here across continents and decades, my mother's words found me. The reception continued with the kind of networking that felt less like obligation and more like finding family. Every scholar had a story of obstacles, overcome potential realized despite opposition. The room hummed with the particular energy of people who'd refused to be ordinary. Then Professor Hartwell clinked a glass for attention. Friends, colleagues, fellow travelers on the path of excellence. Tonight, we celebrate not just achievement, but transformation. The Rhodes Trust exists because Cecil Rhodes believed in finding those who would, quote, fight the world's fight. Looking around this room, seeing the clean energy pioneers, the human rights defenders, the medical revolutionaries among us, I'd say we're doing rather well. Gentle laughter rippled through the crowd. This year, we welcomed scholars from 32 countries each, bringing unique perspective and shared commitment to leaving the world better than they found it. Among them is someone whose journey reminds us that excellence can bloom in the harshest soil, that family isn't always blood, and that sometimes the best revenge against those who'd limit us is simply to succeed beyond their wildest fears. Eyes turned toward me. Heat crept up my neck. Era Harper came to us under extraordinary circumstances. In 6 months, she's advanced her research to the implementation phase, formed partnerships across 3 continents, and shown that Margaret Chen's daughter inherited more than DNA. She inherited the conviction that science serves humanity. Ara, would you say a few words? I hadn't prepared for this. The room waited with the particular patience of people who understood imposter syndrome and excellence could coexist. 6 months ago, I stood in this building certain I was about to lose everything I'd worked for. My family had stolen my passport, my identity, my trust. What I didn't know was that they'd actually freed me to find my real family in my grandfather, who recognized his daughter's equations in my published work, in my Aunt Eleanor, who taught me that success isn't selfish when it lights paths for others, in my sister, who chose courage over complicity, in Professor Martinez and colleagues who formed a wall around my dreams when others tried to tear them down. The room had gone completely still, these accomplished humans giving me their full attention. My birth mother died when I was 1. I spent 22 years not knowing she existed, not knowing I was following footsteps I couldn't see. But water finds its way, whether through stone or years or deliberate deception. Today, when the BBC asked to document my work, my instinct was to hide, to stay small and safe and private. Then I realized that's exactly what the people who stole my childhood would want. So yes, I'll let them film. Yes, I'll go to Bangladesh and show how one woman's dream becomes another woman's mission. Because visibility isn't vanity when girls in hardware store stockrooms need to see that molecules don't care about family approval. And because I continued finding strength in their supportive faces, my mother named me in her notes as her future research partner. It took 22 years and federal fraud charges and an emergency passport, but Margaret Chen and Ara Harper are finally working together through time, through theft, through truth that refuses to stay buried. So, to the scholars in this room and the ones still fighting to join us, don't hide your light. Don't apologize for excellence. Don't let anyone convince you that success is selfish or ambition is ugly. The world needs your solutions too desperately for false modesty. Fight the world's fight, yes, but fight it visibly. Someone's counting on seeing you win. The applause started slowly, then built to something that felt like acceptance. Understanding shared purpose. Professor Hartwell raised her glass. To visible excellence and inherited dreams. The toast echoed through the room, binding us in purpose that transcended individual achievement. Later, as the reception wound down, Dr. Al-Rashid approached me. That documentary will matter, not for the viewers who want drama, but for the girls who need permission to be brilliant. Well done. My phone buzzed with a message from my grandfather. Linda showed me the live stream of your speech. Your mother would be so proud. I am so proud. Love you. Then, Eleanor, watched you light up that room from across an ocean. This is what judicial power looks like, truth spoken fearlessly. Magnificent. And finally, Megan, my chemistry professor showed your speech to our class. 3 girls approached me after to ask about pursuing research. You're changing lives already. Love your sister who's definitely crying in the library right now. I walked back to my flat through Oxford's ancient streets, feeling the weight and wonder of visibility accepted. Tomorrow, I'd call the BBC, agree to let them document the journey. Next month, I'd fly to Ohio, testify against the people who'd tried to steal my future. After that, Bangladesh and the beginning of making clean water reality for communities that needed it most. But tonight, I stood at my window overlooking medieval rooftops and modern dreams, wearing my mother's water molecule necklace and my own earned confidence. The girl who'd hidden in stockrooms reading chemistry textbooks had become a woman speaking truth to rooms full of world changers. The phone call that started it, all the one where I discovered my passport missing, felt like a lifetime ago. Every call since had rebuilt what was stolen piece by piece, connection by connection, until the network of support was stronger than any biological bond. My flat's small space held enormous future. Research that would save lives, partnerships that would change nations, visibility that would open doors I couldn't yet imagine. Margaret Chen's daughter had finally answered her calling, and everyone was listening. The federal courthouse in Columbus looked different from the BBC camera's perspective. I'd returned to Ohio not as the desperate girl who'd fled 6 months ago, but as a Rhodes Scholar with a documentary crew, a legal team provided by Chen Biotech, and the strange armor of international attention. "Remember, you don't have to answer anything beyond the court proceedings," David Ashford reminded me. He'd flown over to cover the trial for The Guardian, but more importantly, to provide moral support. "The documentary crew has agreed to focus on your work, not the family drama." I know. I adjusted the water molecule necklace, my mother's constant presence. But hiding from it gives them power. I'd rather control the narrative. The last month had been a whirlwind of preparation. Between research advancement, BBC filming, and legal briefings, I'd barely slept. But something had crystallized during those long nights in the lab. This trial wasn't about revenge. It was about truth. About showing other trapped daughters that escape was possible, that theft of potential was a crime worth prosecuting. My phone buzzed. "Eleanor, just arrived. Meet you at security. Remember, you've already won everything that matters." The courthouse steps teemed with media. My parents' fraud had grown from family crime to cautionary tale about exploitation of gifted children. 3 other families had come forward with similar stories, making this trial bigger than the Harpers versus their daughter. "Miss Harper, how does it feel to face your parents?" "Ara, will you forgive them?" "Is it true Chen Biotech is worth billions?" I walked past the shouting reporters, guided by my grandfather's security team. Inside, artificial calm replaced outside chaos. The hallways smelled of floor wax, and justice differed, familiar from 6 months ago but different now. "Ara." I turned to find Megan waiting by the witness room. She looked different, older, more solid, like she'd finally grown into her own skin. Northwestern was agreeing with her. "Hey," I said, suddenly uncertain. We'd texted constantly, but hadn't seen each other since that day at the airport. She hugged me fiercely. "You look like someone who belongs at Oxford." "I look like someone who finally learned to balance chemical equations. Growth all around." "How are you handling this?" "Better than I thought. My therapist says I'm processing well. Turns out confronting your parents' crimes in federal court is actually therapeutic." "Who knew?" She smiled wryly. "I testify after you. United Front of Harper Daughters, saying enough." Eleanor appeared magisterial in her judge's presence, even without robes. "Girls, ready?" We weren't girls anymore, but from Eleanor the term felt protective rather than diminishing. "The prosecution wants to establish pattern of behavior," she explained. "They'll ask about your childhood, the control mechanisms, the escalation of fraud. Answer honestly, but don't elaborate beyond the questions. The defense will try to paint you as ungrateful daughters. Don't take the bait." "What's their strategy?" Megan asked. "Loving parents who made mistakes. Successful daughters who abandoned family. The usual manipulation playbook." Eleanor's expression hardened. "They don't know about the new evidence." "What new evidence?" I asked. "Security footage from the biotech conference where Margaret presented her research. Shows Frank and Diane Harper in attendance 3 months before, coincidentally becoming your guardians." The floor shifted beneath me. They knew her before. They targeted her, probably planned to get close, maybe collaborate. Her death derailed that plan, but provided a different opportunity. Eleanor squeezed my shoulder. "I'm sorry, we just received the footage yesterday." Targeted. My entire existence had been a long con that started before I was even orphaned. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Kolowski." We filed into the courtroom. There at the defense table sat 2 strangers wearing my parents' faces. Orange jumpsuits had replaced Mom's carefully coordinated outfits. Dad's hardware store confidence had withered into defensive slouching. They looked smaller, older, like theft had been the only thing keeping them inflated. Diane Harper's eyes found mine across the room. For a moment, something flickered there, regret, love, manipulation seeking one last foothold. I looked away, focusing on the water bottle in front of me. H2O, simple, essential, honest in its molecular structure. The prosecution calls Ara Marie Harper. I walked to the witness stand with 6 months of Oxford confidence, with my mother's necklace against my throat, with the knowledge that truth was its own revenge. The prosecutor, Ms. Jennifer Davis, approached with the careful respect reserved for star witnesses who'd rather be anywhere else. Miss Harper, please tell the court about your childhood relationship with your parents. I spoke carefully, painting the picture without editorializing. The constant comparisons to Megan, the minimization of achievements, the redirection of college funds, the way success was treated as betrayal while failure would have been embraced. When did you first suspect something more serious than favoritism? When my passport went missing 3 days before my Rhodes Scholarship interview, I found Megan's earring where it had been stored. Objection, the defense attorney called. Speculation. Sustained. Ms. Davis smoothly redirected. What happened after you discovered your passport missing? I detailed the confrontation, the dismissive responses, Eleanor's intervention, the emergency passport, the discovered documents, the unraveling of 22 years of deception. And the trust fund? I learned I was adopted, that my birth mother had left significant assets for my education and future. My parents had been drawing maintenance fees while preventing me from accessing the principal. Objection. The defendants were legal guardians entitled to reasonable compensation. Overruled. Continue. The prosecution presented evidence methodically: financial records, the plagiarized applications, the systematic theft of my work for Megan's benefit, the planned institutionalization after Oxford. Each revelation built a picture of deliberate, sustained fraud. How has this affected your life, Miss Harper? I considered carefully. It freed me. Their betrayal forced me to find my real family, my grandfather, my aunt, my mentors. It taught me that excellence isn't selfish, that success doesn't require apology. Today, I'm implementing water purification systems that will save lives. That wouldn't have happened if they'd succeeded in keeping me small. No further questions. The defense attorney, Mr. Robert Chen, no relation to my grandfather, thankfully approached like a man trying to defuse a bomb. Miss Harper, weren't your parents simply trying to maintain family harmony by stealing my passport? By encouraging you to consider local opportunities instead of abandoning your family. I wasn't abandoning anyone. I was pursuing education. At their expense? At my birth mother's expense. The trust fund they were stealing from. He shifted tactics. You lived comfortably for 22 years. Private schools, college education, a roof over your head. Doesn't that deserve gratitude? They were paid to provide those things. Well paid according to the financial records. But they loved you. The word hung in the air like a challenge. They loved controlling me, I said finally. They loved the idea of a daughter who would never outshine them. When I became myself instead of their vision, that love turned to sabotage. That's not love. That's ownership. You seem to have recovered well. Rhodes Scholar documentary subject, billionaire grandfather. Perhaps this trial is about revenge. No. I met his eyes steadily. This trial is about accountability, about showing other families that brilliance isn't a betrayal, that potential isn't property. My parents made choices. Those choices have consequences. That's not revenge, that's justice. The cross-examination continued, but I'd found my rhythm. Each question designed to diminish was met with truth that elevated. When it finally ended, I walked from the witness stand feeling lighter despite the weight of testimony. Megan passed me on her way up, squeezing my hand briefly. "Watch this," she whispered. "Chemistry major's about to show them what catalytic reactions look like." I sat between Eleanor and my grandfather as Megan transformed the courtroom into her laboratory. She presented evidence with scientific precision, showing how our parents' fraud had poisoned everything it touched. Her testimony revealed new depths: forged transcripts, stolen identities, a web of deception that trapped more than just their daughters. "I enabled it for too long," she admitted. "But when I saw what they were planning for ARA, institutionalization, permanent control, I couldn't be their puppet anymore. Some chains you have to break yourself." The defense barely attempted cross-examination. What could they say? Both daughters had united against them, armed with evidence and excellence they'd tried to steal. During recess, I escaped to the courthouse steps for air. The BBC crew waited at respectful distance, filming my grandfather as he explained Chen Biotech's educational initiatives inspired by my mother's vision. "Ara." A young woman approached hesitantly, maybe 17, wearing a private school uniform that looked familiar. "I'm Sarah from Westwood Academy. You spoke at our science fair 2 years ago." I remembered vaguely an outreach program Professor Martinez had organized. "You told us about water purification, about following passion despite obstacles." She shifted nervously. "My parents want me to study business, say science is too unstable for women. But after seeing you on the news, seeing you stand up to them, I applied to MIT, early admission for chemical engineering." "Sarah, that's wonderful." "I wanted to thank you for showing it's possible, for being visible even when it's hard." She hurried away before I could respond, leaving me stunned on the courthouse steps. This was why the documentary mattered. Why the trial mattered. Not for revenge, but for revelation, showing trapped brilliance everywhere that escape routes existed. My phone buzzed with messages. Other young women sharing similar stories. Parents who'd reconsidered limitations placed on daughters. Teachers using my story to encourage students. The ripple effects of visibility spreading beyond anything I'd imagined. "What, ready for round 2? Eleanor appeared beside me. "Character witnesses this afternoon." The afternoon brought a parade of support I hadn't expected. Professor Martinez testified about my dedication despite family obstacles. Dr. Randolph video called from Oxford to discuss my research potential. Even Brenda from the passport office appeared, explaining how someone had tried to sabotage my emergency application. But the most powerful testimony came from Dr. James Chen, my grandfather, who spoke with quiet devastation about 22 years of searching for his granddaughter, while the people entrusted with her care systematically erased her identity. Margaret died believing her daughter would be loved and nurtured. Instead, these people stole not just money, but memory. They denied Ara her heritage, her family, her mother's legacy. That's a theft no amount of restitution can repair. The prosecution rested. Tomorrow, the defense would present their case character witnesses who'd portray Frank and Diane Harper as loving parents overwhelmed by circumstances. The jury would deliberate. Justice would either be served or deferred. But watching the news that night from my hotel room, surrounded by the family I'd chosen and who'd chosen me, I realized the verdict didn't matter as much as the visibility. Every major outlet covered the trial. Editorial pages discussed exploitation of gifted children. Social media blazed with "Ush, let her learn" hashtags. The breaking news wasn't about the Harpers' crimes anymore. It was about the conversation those crimes had started, about families examining their own dynamics, about brilliant girls seeing possibility despite opposition. My phone rang, Megan calling from her hotel. "Turn on channel 7, she said. "Now." I switched channels to find a panel discussing our trial, but the focus had shifted from crime to triumph. "What we're seeing," one expert explained, "is how resilience can transform trauma into purpose. Both Harper daughters have turned their parents' betrayal into fuel for their own success. It's a masterclass in refusing victimhood." You hear that? Megan laughed. We're a master class. Who saw that coming? Not Frank and Diane Harper, I replied. We laughed together, sisters bonded by survival rather than blood. Tomorrow would bring defense attorneys and difficult questions. Next week would bring verdicts and consequences. But tonight we were breaking news for all the right reasons. 2 daughters who'd refused to be diminished. 2 women proving that theft of potential was a crime worth prosecuting. The real verdict was already in. We'd won by becoming ourselves, despite everything designed to prevent it. That was news worth breaking. The defense's case unfolded like a greatest hits album of manipulation. Former neighbors testified about the loving Harper family. Business associates praised Frank's dedication to his struggling hardware store. Friends from Diane's book club dabbed at tears while describing a devoted mother. I sat between my grandfather and Eleanor watching this performance of selective memory. Megan, across the aisle with the other witnesses, kept catching my eye with expressions that ranged from disbelief to dark amusement. Mrs. Patterson, the defense attorney, addressed a woman I vaguely remembered from childhood barbecues. Tell us about Diane Harper as a mother. Oh, she lived for those girls. Everything was about their futures, their success. She drove hours for Megan's pageants, supported Ara's science interests. Objection. Ms. Davis interrupted. Witness is speculating about internal family dynamics she didn't observe. Sustained. The parade continued. Each witness painted Frank and Diane as overwhelmed parents who'd made questionable decisions from a place of love. The narrative was almost convincing if you ignored the evidence: financial fraud, identity theft, systematic sabotage. Then Frank Harper took the stand. 6 months had aged him a decade. The man who terrorized my potential looked deflated, his hardware store bravado replaced by rehearsed remorse. Still, when his eyes met mine, I saw the calculating coldness that had stolen 22 years of truth. Mr. Harper, his attorney began gently, tell us about adopting Ara. Diane couldn't have more children after Megan. When the opportunity came to adopt Margaret Chen's daughter, it felt like fate. We were distantly related, had met at conferences. We promised to raise her daughter with love. And did you? We tried. His voice cracked convincingly. But Ara was so brilliant, so driven. Nothing we did was enough. She pulled away from family, chose achievement over attachment. We made mistakes trying to keep her close. I forced myself to stay still, to not react to this revisionist history. Eleanor's hand on my arm provided anchoring weight. The passport incident? A desperate mistake. We thought if she missed the interview, she'd realize family mattered more than accolades. We planned to return it after pretend we'd found it. Stupid, but not malicious. And the trust fund? We used it for her benefit, private schools, tutoring opportunities. Maybe we weren't perfect accountants, but every penny went toward her future. The lies flowed smooth as water through a contaminated system. He'd had months to perfect this performance, to transform crime into care. Cross-examination revealed the truth beneath his polish. Mr. Harper, Ms. Davis approached with shark-like precision, you say every penny went toward Ara's future. Can you explain these receipts for Megan's pageant expenses paid from the Chen Trust? We considered both girls our daughters, supporting one supported family unity. I see. And this documentation showing you attended Margaret Chen's conference 3 months before her death. His face paled. Coincidence. We attended many conferences where you introduced yourself as potential investors interested in water purification technology. I don't recall. Perhaps this will refresh your memory. She presented the security footage Eleanor had mentioned. There were Frank and Diane, young and hungry, approaching Margaret at her presentation booth. The timestamp showed 3 months before the accident that would orphan me. We were interested in many technologies, he stammered. Interested enough to research Dr. Chen's personal life. This investigator's report commissioned by you details her daily routines, her childcare arrangements, her weekend patterns. The courtroom went silent. We were considering investment, due diligence. Due diligence that happened to reveal she'd named you distant relatives as potential guardians. Objection. The defense attorney stood. Prosecution is implying? I'm implying nothing, Ms. Davis said coolly. I'm presenting evidence that the defendants targeted Margaret Chen months before her death, researched her extensively, and positioned themselves to gain custody of her daughter and assets. The judge leaned forward. Overruled. Continue. Mr. Harper, did you or did you not hire a private investigator to surveil Margaret Chen? I plead the fifth. The words hung in the air like admission. My grandfather's hand found mine squeezing tight. They hadn't killed her, but they'd been circling like vultures waiting for opportunity. The rest of Frank's testimony crumbled under evidence. Financial records showed systematic theft. Email chains revealed calculated fraud. By the time he left the stand, his performance had dissolved into sullen silence. Diane Harper followed playing the martyred mother to perfection. Tears flowed as she described loving Ara despite her rejection and supporting dreams even when they took her from us. We made mistakes, she sobbed. What parent doesn't? But we loved her, both our girls. Everything we did came from love. Including submitting her research papers under Megan's name, Ms. Davis asked. We wanted Megan to have opportunities too. Ara had so many that she earned. That came easily to her. Megan struggled. We were just trying to balance things. By committing fraud. By being imperfect parents. The performance might have been affecting if not for the evidence screenshots of her calculating trust fund theft recordings, of her planning my institutionalization documents showing years of deliberate sabotage. Mrs. Harper, this email chain shows you discussing, quote, managing Ara's expectations to preserve family assets. Can you explain, taken out of context, the context being your plan to prevent her from accessing her inheritance until you drained it completely? Diane's mask finally slipped. For just a moment, the calculating woman who'd stolen my childhood showed through the tears. She owed us. We raised her, fed her, housed her. That money was compensation for 22 years of parenting an ungrateful child who cared more about molecules than family. The courtroom erupted. Even her own attorney looked stunned by the admission. No further questions, Ms. Davis said with satisfaction. During recess, I escaped to the bathroom to compose myself. Megan found me there, both of us staring at our reflections like strangers. They really thought they owned us, she said quietly, like we were investments meant to pay dividends. Are you okay? She laughed shakily. I'm furious. 22 years of being their perfect puppet, and for what? So they could steal from my sister to decorate my empty achievements. At least you always knew something was wrong. I thought their love was real. Maybe it was in their broken way. No. Her voice turned fierce. Love doesn't steal. Love doesn't diminish. What they gave us was possession dressed up with ribbons. Real love is what Eleanor did for you, what your grandfather does, what we're learning to do for ourselves. We returned to court for closing arguments. Ms. Davis painted a clear picture of calculated fraud, systematic theft, and the monetization of children's potential. The defense countered with pleas for mercy, painting the Harpers as overwhelmed parents who'd lost their way. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Ms. Davis concluded, this case isn't just about financial fraud. It's about the theft of identity, opportunity, and truth. The defendants didn't just steal money, they stole a daughter's right to know her mother, her heritage, her worth. They turned brilliance into a commodity and love into a transaction. That's not parenting. That's trafficking in human potential. The jury filed out. We were left to wait suspended between justice and more injustice. My phone buzzed with messages of support. The documentary crew had released a preview focusing on my Bangladesh preparations rather than the trial, but the context was clear. Brilliant woman overcomes family sabotage to save lives. 3 hours later, the jury returned. On the count of wire fraud, we find the defendants guilty. On the count of mail fraud, we find the defendants guilty. On the count of identity theft, we find the defendants guilty. The list continued, guilty on all 26 counts. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. Watching the people who'd raised me led away in handcuffs brought no satisfaction, only the hollow recognition of waste. They'd wasted their lives on greed, wasted our potential on their limitations, wasted love on control. Outside the courthouse, media clustered like molecules seeking stable bonds. I stood between my chosen family grandfather, Eleanor Megan, even Professor Martinez, who'd flown in for support, and faced the cameras. Today's verdict doesn't undo 22 years of deception, but it does affirm that brilliance isn't property, potential isn't commodity, and children aren't investments. My parents made choices. Those choices have consequences. But this story isn't about them anymore. It's about the work ahead. Clean water for millions, opportunities for students who've been told to dream smaller, proof that theft of potential is a crime worth prosecuting. "Will you forgive them?" someone shouted. I considered. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's not excusing. It's releasing the hold their choices have on my future. So yes, eventually I'll forgive them. But today I'm focused on the family that chose love over control, support over sabotage. Today I'm thinking about flights to Bangladesh and water that needs purifying and girls who need to see that escape is possible. "What's next?" another reporter called. "Life," Megan answered, stepping forward. "Actual life. Not the performance they scripted, but the messy, brilliant, chosen life we're building ourselves. Our parents are going to prison. We're going to change the world. Seems like a fair trade." The crowd laughed. We pushed through together, this patchwork family built from betrayal and becoming. That night, we gathered in my grandfather's hotel suite. Eleanor raised a toast with water naturally. "To justice served and futures reclaimed." To Margaret Chen's daughters, my grandfather added, including Megan in his gaze. All of them. We drank to that, to chosen family, and inherited dreams to potential that refused theft and truth that demanded voice. The verdict was just paper and pronouncements. The real judgment was in lives lived fully despite those who'd tried to limit them. Tomorrow, I'd fly back to Oxford. Next month, Bangladesh. The work my mother started and my theft-attempted parents interrupted would continue. But tonight, surrounded by people who'd fought for my future instead of against it, I felt the particular peace that comes from refusing victimhood. Frank and Diane Harper had tried to steal everything. Instead, they'd freed me to find everything that mattered. The courtroom reckoning was over. The real reckoning, living brilliantly despite their worst efforts, would last a lifetime. And I couldn't wait to begin. The Bangladesh expedition transformed theoretical knowledge into tangible impact. 3 weeks in rural villages installing water purification systems while the BBC documented every breakthrough and setback. Watching clean water flow from contaminated sources felt like watching my mother's dream materialize 23 years after her death. The membranes are performing even better than laboratory tests predicted. I told the camera, trying not to think about the millions who might watch. 98.9% contaminant removal after 2,000 gallons. No electricity required. Total cost per unit $2.40. Behind me, children splashed in water they could finally drink without fear. Their laughter needed no translation. Dr. Al-Rashid, who joined the expedition, nodded approvingly. "This is why we do science. Not for publications or prizes, but for this children who won't die from preventable diseases." The documentary crew captured it all. The 16-hour installation days, The celebrations when clean water first flowed, the tears from mothers who'd lost children to waterborne illness. They also filmed the quiet moments, me reading my mother's research notes by lamplight, finding margin notes that said, "Someday this will matter." Someday had arrived. But the real transformation happened internally, away from courtrooms and criminal parents, surrounded by problems that yielded to effort rather than DNA. I discovered who Ara Harper was when not defined by opposition. She was a teacher explaining filtration to local technicians who'd maintain the systems. She was a student, learning from communities that had survived without infrastructure through ingenuity. She was Margaret Chen's daughter, completing work begun before she was born. "Your mother would be proud," my grandfather said during one of our satellite calls. He'd wanted to join the expedition, but I'd convinced him to coordinate supply chains from Singapore instead. At 73, he didn't need dysentery. "I think she is proud," I replied, surprising myself with the certainty. "I feel her sometimes, in the equations, in the way solutions appear just when I need them." Science or spirituality, maybe there's no difference. Maybe love is just another force that persists through transformation. We'd installed 17 systems by expedition's end. Each site became a teaching center where local teams learned construction and maintenance. Sustainability through education, another lesson from my birth mother's notes. Returning to Oxford after Bangladesh felt like switching between microscope lenses, same specimen, different magnification. The ancient city's privileges stood in sharp relief against the villages, where clean water meant survival. But that contrast drove purpose rather than guilt. "Impressive work," Professor Randolph said, reviewing the field data. "Ready to scale up?" "Beyond ready." We spent the next months refining the manufacturing process, partnering with NGOs, writing grants that turned $2 solutions into $1 million impacts. The BBC documentary aired to critical acclaim and, more importantly, to increased funding for water projects worldwide. My flat became command central for what we started calling the Chen Harper Initiative, my mother's name, first honoring origins. Charts covered every wall showing installation sites, water quality, data, lives impacted. The desk by the window barely visible under proposals and progress reports. Megan visited during Oxford's spring break, her first time abroad. Watching her navigate ancient streets with wide-eyed wonder reminded me how far we'd both traveled. "This is insane," she kept saying. "My sister lives in Harry Potter land and is literally saving lives. How is this real?" "Your sister is also failing spectacularly at work-life balance and surviving on digestive biscuits." Some things don't change. She helped me organize the chaos, bringing her newfound chemistry knowledge to bear on supply chain problems. "You know I could help with this." Northwestern has a summer internship program, international development through scientific application. "You want to join the family business." The real family business. The one built on helping instead of taking. She spent the rest of her visit shadowing my research, asking questions that showed she'd inherited more than pageant skills. By the time she left, we'd outlined a summer collaboration that would bring Northwestern students to Bangladesh, expanding the teaching network. "Well, look at us," she said at Heathrow, both of us tearing up. "The Harper sisters actually acting like sisters. Who saw that coming?" "Not Frank and Diane Harper, that's for sure." We laughed through tears, hugging goodbye with the fierce affection of survivors who'd chosen each other. The Rhodes community embraced the Chen Harper Initiative with enthusiasm that surprised me. Scholars from diverse fields offered expertise. Economists modeled distribution strategies. Anthropologists studied cultural adoption patterns. Physicians tracked health improvements. The network Cecil Rhodes envisioned became real through water molecules and shared purpose. "This is how change happens," Professor Hartwell observed during a planning session, "not through individual brilliance, but through brilliant individuals working collectively." David Ashford returned periodically to document progress. His articles shifted focus from family drama to systemic change, using our story as a lens for examining global water access. "You've transcended the narrative," he told me over coffee. "No longer the girl who escaped bad parents. Now you're the woman solving real problems." Both things can be true, but only one matters for the future. Speaking of the future, my grandfather arrived for installation number 50, a milestone worth celebrating. We chose a site in rural India where waterborne cholera had claimed 17 children the previous year. "Your mother proposed this exact location in her graduate thesis," he revealed, producing a faded map annotated in her handwriting. "She calculated it would have maximum impact on downstream communities." Following her directions, 24 years later, we installed the system that turned her theory into reality. Clean water flowed into collection tanks, while local families watched with the particular hope of people who'd learned not to trust promises. "It works," a grandmother said through our translator, tasting the filtered water. "It actually works." "It works," I confirmed, thinking of all the ways those words applied. The initiative worked, the technology worked, the healing between grandfather and granddaughter worked, the transformation of theft into gift worked. That night, the village celebrated with music and food I pretended my Western stomach could handle. My grandfather and I sat slightly apart, watching joy manifest through dance and laughter. "I've been thinking about forgiveness," I said suddenly. He waited patient with my processing. "Not for them. For me, carrying anger is like drinking contaminated water. It only poisons the carrier." Wise thoughts. "Eleanor sent me their prison address, said I might want closure someday. Do you?" I considered while children spun in circles drunk on celebration and clean water. Not yet, but maybe someday, when I can see them as humans who made terrible choices rather than monsters who stole my childhood. That's already more grace than required. Margaret would want grace, I think. She chose them as guardians. She saw something worth trusting even if they betrayed it. He took my hand. "Grandfather, comfort, bridging decades. You're allowed to heal at your own pace. Forgiveness isn't obligation, it's liberation when you're ready." The BBC documentary aired 6 months later to audience numbers that crashed viewing platforms. Inherited Dreams, A Daughter's Quest for Clean Water, won awards I couldn't pronounce, and more importantly, generated millions in donation pledges. The most surprising response came through Eleanor, a letter forwarded from federal prison. "I won't open it if you don't want," she offered during a video call. But curiosity won. Inside Diane Harper's careful handwriting. "Ara, I watched your documentary from the prison library. Seeing you in Bangladesh helping those children, I finally understood what we stole from you. Not just money or opportunity, but purpose. Your mother, your real mother, had that same light when she talked about water access. We thought we could contain it, profit from it. We were wrong. I'm sorry doesn't begin to cover our sins, but watching you become who you were meant to be despite us, maybe that's the only apology that matters. May your water wash away our stains on your story, Diane." I read it 3 times before folding it away. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement that some transformations were possible even in prison. "How do you feel?" Eleanor asked gently. "Like I'm finally writing my own story, not in opposition to theirs, just mine." That's freedom. Year 2 at Oxford accelerated everything. The Chen Harper Initiative expanded to 15 countries. My dissertation on biomimetic water purification earned early approval for fast-track completion. Megan's internship succeeded so well that Northwestern created a permanent partnership program. But the moment that mattered most came quietly. Alone in my lab at 2 a.m., I solved the efficiency problem that had plagued large-scale implementation. The equation materialized like recognition, my innovation building on my mother's foundation, creating something entirely new. I called my grandfather, forgetting time zones in excitement. I did it. 99.9% efficiency at industrial scale. We can purify city water supplies, not just villages. His tears were audible across oceans. She dreamed of this. You realized it. Margaret and Ara working across time. Grandpa. Yes. Thank you for finding me. Thank you, he replied, for becoming findable. That night, I stood at my window overlooking Oxford's dreaming spires. The girl who discovered her passport missing 3 years ago wouldn't recognize this woman wearing confidence like my mother's necklace. But she'd understand the transformation water into wine theft, into gift isolation, into connection. My phone buzzed with messages from the expanding network. Installation teams sending progress reports, partner organizations requesting expansions, students asking for mentorship, the ripples of one purified life spreading to touch thousands. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, scaling innovations, managing growth, balancing personal life with global impact, the beautiful problems of success rather than survival. But tonight in the city where my mother had dreamed and I'd made those dreams real, I felt the particular satisfaction of aligned purpose. Every molecule in its right place, every choice leading here, every theft transformed into gift for others. The water initiative would continue growing, reaching millions my mother had envisioned. Megan would graduate and join the mission full-time. My grandfather would see his daughter's legacy flourish through generations. Eleanor would use our case to protect other potential theft victims. And I would keep purifying water intentions, the poisoned wells of the past, not because I had to anymore, but because I chose to. Because Margaret Chen's daughter had inherited more than equations and trust funds. She'd inherited the certainty that clean water, literal and metaphorical, was everyone's birthright, and she'd spend her life making sure everyone could drink deeply freely without fear of contamination. The new beginning wasn't starting anymore. It was flowing powerful and pure as water through graphene oxide, transforming everything it touched, including me. The Stockholm concert hall glittered like a jewel box, every surface designed to amplify light and sound into something transcendent. I stood backstage in a gown that cost more than our first 100 water purification systems, courtesy of a designer who'd seen the documentary and insisted on dressing the woman who makes dirty water afraid. Nervous. Megan adjusted my hair, her own elegant dress a far cry from pageant costumes. She'd graduated from Northwestern with honors and joined the Chen Harper Initiative, full-time running our educational partnerships with natural leadership I'd never seen when she was performing for our parents' approval. Terrified, I admitted. 10,000 villages, fine. International television audience of millions, absolutely not. You've got this, Eleanor said, regal in judicial black that somehow looked appropriate for the occasion. Remember, you're not just accepting an award. You're amplifying the voices of everyone who drinks clean water because of your work. The International Young Scientist Award had surprised everyone, especially me. At 25, I was their youngest recipient ever recognized, not just for the technology, but for what the committee called transformative implementation that bridges laboratory innovation with human need. 2 minutes, a stage manager warned. My grandfather appeared dignified in his tuxedo, tears already threatening. Your mother's colleagues are watching from Singapore. The entire Chen biotech team. They're so proud. Through the backstage monitors, I could see the audience filling the Golden Hall. Scientists and diplomats, activists and actors, the strange alchemy of events where accomplishment transcended category. In the third row, my Oxford colleagues. Professor Randolph had brought the entire water resource team, their formal wear not quite hiding the academics underneath. Further back, I spotted David Ashford, covering the event for The Guardian, but also here as friend and chronicler of the journey. He caught my eye through the camera feed and gave a subtle thumbs up. Ladies and gentlemen, The host's voice resonated through the hall. The International Young Scientist Award recognizes individuals under 30 whose work demonstrates exceptional innovation and humanitarian impact. This year's recipient transformed personal tragedy into global triumph, turning her late mother's theoretical research into practical solutions that have provided clean water to over 12 million people across 23 nations. The statistics still stunned me. 12 million. When I'd stood in this same city for the documentary premiere 2 years ago, we'd reached 1 million. The exponential growth came from teaching others to build and maintain systems my mother's sustainability vision made real. From a childhood marked by identity theft and family betrayal to becoming the youngest Rhodes Scholar in her program, from a basement laboratory to the Bangladesh Delta, please welcome Dr. Ara Marie Harper. The applause hit like a physical wave as I walked on stage. The lights blinded initially, then resolved into faces some familiar, most strangers united in celebrating science serving humanity. I reached the podium where the award waited, a crystal sculpture of interconnected water molecules that caught light like frozen hope. The host stepped back, leaving me alone with the microphone and the magnitude of the moment. "Thank you." I began, voice steadier than expected. "This recognition belongs to so many beyond myself. To my birth mother, Dr. Margaret Chen, whose research notes guided me across decades. To my grandfather, Dr. James Chen, who found me through equations when geography failed. To my Aunt Eleanor, who taught me that success becomes meaningful when it lights paths for others. To my sister Megan, who chose courage over comfort and now leads our educational initiatives. To Professor Martinez and my Oxford mentors, who protected my dreams when others tried to steal them." I paused, finding familiar faces in the crowd. To the communities who trusted unproven technology because their children were dying from preventable diseases. To the local teams who maintained systems with ingenuity that humbles my engineering degree. To every girl who's been told her ambition is selfishness, her excellence a betrayal of family expectations. The hall had gone completely still, thousands listening with the intensity of recognition. 3 years ago, my adoptive parents stole my passport to prevent me from attending my Rhodes Scholarship interview. They saw my potential as a threat to their control. Today, they're in federal prison, watching this ceremony on a communal television, perhaps finally understanding that brilliance cannot be caged, that water always finds its way. A ripple of response through the audience, support, understanding, shared experience radiating from those who'd fought their own battles against limitation. My mother died when I was 1, but she left me more than money or patents. She left me purpose. In her research notes, she wrote, "Clean water is a human right, not a technological luxury. My daughter will understand this in her bones." 24 years later, I do understand. Every time a child drinks safely, every time a mother doesn't have to choose between hydration and disease, every time our systems prove that solutions don't require complexity, just commitment. I touch the water molecule necklace, my constant companion. This award celebrates innovation, but innovation means nothing without implementation. Science serves humanity only when it leaves the laboratory and enters life. That's why the Chen Harper Initiative focuses on teaching, not just installing. Why we share our patents freely, because my mother's dream wasn't profit, but proliferation of clean water access. To those watching who feel trapped by circumstance or family, who've been told their dreams are too big or too bold, remember that water carves canyons not through force, but persistence. That the same parents who tried to diminish me inadvertently created the conditions for my success. Their theft became my freedom. Their limitations became my launching pad. I lifted the crystal award, watching it fracture light into rainbows. Margaret Chen believed water could transform the world. She was right. But transformation requires more than technology. It requires courage to persist, despite opposition, wisdom to build networks, not walls, and grace to turn theft into gift for others. So, to the 12 million who drink clean water today and the billions who still don't, this award is promise, not culmination. Every prize, every recognition, every platform is just another tool to amplify the simple truth my mother knew. Clean water is birthright, not privilege. We won't stop until that birthright reaches everyone. Thank you to the committee for this recognition. Thank you to everyone who's joined this mission. And thank you to Frank and Diane Harper, not for what you gave, but for what you taught me through your taking. You showed me exactly who I refuse to become. I stepped back from the podium to thunderous applause. The standing ovation felt less like personal celebration and more like collective commitment. All these brilliant minds agreeing that science must serve, that theft could transform to gift, that one woman's dream could echo across generations. The host returned, clearly moved. Dr. Harper, your acceptance speech was extraordinary. Is there anything you'd like to add? I thought of the villages waiting for installation, the students eager to learn the problems still unsolved. But mostly, I thought of viewers who might need permission to pursue their own brilliance. Just this, if you're watching and wondering whether your dreams matter, whether fighting for them is worth family conflict, whether success is selfish when others want you small, remember the water you purify for others starts with refusing contamination in yourself. Choose clarity, choose purpose, choose the family that celebrates your growth rather than fearing it. And to those considering supporting our work, we need engineers and educators, innovators and implementers. Visit our website, join our mission. Help us prove that Margaret Chen was right. Water changes everything, especially when it's clean. The ceremony continued with photos and interviews, handshakes with laureates, and promises of collaboration. But the moment that mattered most came during the reception, when a young woman approached hesitantly. Dr. Harper, I'm Fatima from Bangladesh. My village received one of your first systems. I remembered her a teenager, then fiercely intelligent, translating between our team and her community. Fatima, how are you? I'm studying engineering at Dhaka University, full scholarship. Her eyes shone. After watching you work, I knew what I wanted to do. My professors say I have aptitude for membrane technology. That's wonderful. 5 girls from my village are now in university, all science programs, all because we saw you someone who looked young like us solving problems that had existed forever. She gripped my hands. You didn't just bring clean water, you brought possibility. After she left to find her professor, I stood at the window overlooking Stockholm's lights reflected in dark water. Somewhere across oceans, my parents sat in separate prisons, their theft-based empire collapsed. Somewhere, village children drank safely from systems their communities maintained. Somewhere, Margaret Chen's spirit smiled at equations becoming impact. My phone buzzed with messages, installation teams sending progress reports, partner organizations requesting expansion, media outlets wanting interviews. The infrastructure of change humming with purpose. But the text that mattered most came from Megan. Watched your speech with my chemistry students. 3 girls cried. 5 changed their majors. One said, I didn't know we were allowed to be that brave. We're all allowed now thanks to you. Love you, sister. Eleanor appeared beside me, champagne in hand. Powerful speech. The part about Frank and Diane watching from prison, calculated or spontaneous? Both. They needed to be named. Their theft is part of the story whether we like it or not. And forgiving them. Someday, when I can see them as cautionary tales rather than monsters, when their choices become teaching tools rather than wounds. That's wisdom beyond your years. That's survival transformed to purpose. Different thing entirely. The celebration continued around a science and art achievement and ambition mingling in the Golden Hall. Tomorrow would bring flights back to field sites, new problems to solve, the beautiful weight of work that mattered. But tonight I wore my mother's necklace and my own earned confidence, surrounded by chosen family and unexpected allies, holding an award that belonged to everyone who'd refused to accept contaminated circumstances. Ready for the next challenge? Eleanor asked. I thought of the proposals on my desk. Citywide purification in Lagos partnership with the World Health Organization, the book contract David had been encouraging, the university position Oxford offered to keep me close. Beyond ready. We toasted again to Margaret Chen's legacy, to clean water's persistence, to theft becoming gift, becoming transformation. The night sparkled with promise, as bright as Stockholm's lights, as clear as perfectly filtered water, as powerful as daughters who refused diminishment. The award ceremony ended, but the real celebration was just beginning. 12 million served, billions to go, one molecule at a time, one membrane at a moment, one woman's dream flowing forward through her daughter's determination. The water revolution had found its voice, and everyone, even those watching from prison, could hear it sing. If my story touches your heart, if you've ever fought for your dreams despite family opposition, or if you believe every child deserves clean water, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Did you face similar challenges pursuing your education or career? How did you find your chosen family? What gives you courage to persist when others want you small? Like this video if you believe in turning pain into purpose. Subscribe to hear more stories of triumph over betrayal of dreams realized despite those who'd steal them. Share this with someone who needs reminding that their brilliance isn't selfish, their ambition isn't betrayal, and their success doesn't require apology. Together, we're proving that theft of potential is a crime worth fighting, that water finds its way despite all obstacles, and that sometimes the family that matters most is the one we build from shared purpose rather than shared DNA. Thank you for witnessing this journey from a stolen passport to Stockholm's golden stage. Thank you for believing that every daughter deserves to pursue her dreams without permission. Thank you for understanding that clean water, literal and metaphorical, is everyone's birthright. Until next time, keep flowing toward your dreams. Keep filtering out those who'd contaminate your purpose. Keep remembering that the very obstacles meant to stop you might be the catalysts that launch you toward extraordinary heights. Remember, you are allowed to be brilliant. You are allowed to succeed. You are allowed to transform every theft into a gift for others. Now go forth and purify your own path. The world is waiting for what only you can offer. With love and endless gratitude, Aura.